Chapter 33. Li Daochong never thought that the pretentious senior sister in front of him would actually be Chu Qianyue. As the youngest, specially invited lecturer of Xian-Tsang University, Chu Qianyue had too many halos. Not only that, she also had another identity, the mentor of the #1 genius of Blue Bay Star, Battle Sword Augustine. 7 years ago, the first of the 3 geniuses who represented Xian-Tsang University in the joint examination of 100 schools was this legendary figure. Today, the STO family of Blue Bay Star, one of the 4 major families of Blue Bay Star, also became the #1 family because of Augustine. 20 years ago, the #1 family was the Li family, because the Li family at that time had Li Tianyang. Chu Qianyue was not a native of Blue Bay Star. 10 years ago, she transferred to Blue Bay Star's Xian-Tsang University from a resource-depleted planet in the 5-ring star sector. It took her only 3 years to reach the foundation establishment stage, and she stayed at the university to become a lecturer. Li Daochong had seen Chu Qianyue once during the final exam last semester. Because it was too far away, he couldn't see her clearly. At that time, Li Daochong also didn't pay much attention to these things, so the impression in his memory was relatively vague. Moreover, Li Daochong would never have thought that Chu Qianyue would dress up as a senior sister and appear. Chu Qianyue was very satisfied with Li Daochong's expression, which meant that this kid should have no objection to the special training she proposed. The advantage of being an excellent lecturer was that you could teach any student you wanted. However, Chu Qianyue's special training of Li Daochong was entirely to find a sparring partner for herself, not for Li Daochong. Just now, when Li Daochong was unconscious, Chu Qianyue soaked Li Daochong in the strengthened healing spirit liquid to heal him, and at the same time, she also carried out a comprehensive evaluation of his body. Chu Qianyue thought that she had found a good seedling, but the evaluation results greatly disappointed her. The comprehensive evaluation of all indicators barely passed. There were a total of 12 evaluation standards, and 3 of the evaluation results were less than 30 points. Fortunately, the mental strength evaluation was 80 points, and the physical coordination evaluation was 75 points. If it weren't for the fact that these 2 items were above average, Li Daochong's final evaluation results would have been terrible. However, there was one thing that made Chu Qianyue a little surprised. According to the school's records, Li Daochong's spiritual veins were exhausted, but her evaluation result was that this kid had 4 basic spiritual veins that were opened, and the other 5 were exhausted. Although it was still very bad, it was still a pass and not a cripple. If he worked hard enough, he would have no problem reaching the Qi-gathering realm. Among the students taught by Chu Qianyue, the worst one had opened all 9 basic spiritual veins. The others were either 5 elements spiritual veins or profound heavens spiritual veins. Chu Qianyue never taught bad students. In Chu Qianyue's view, if she proposed special training for Li Daochong, he would definitely agree unconditionally, and all the students in Xian-Tsang University would fight to attend her class. "Teacher Chu, I'm sorry, but let's forget about the special training. I don't have time." Li Daochong was surprised, but his reason still made him refuse Chu Qianyue. It's not that Li Daochong didn't want to be specially trained by this excellent lecturer, but his current situation was very special. After Li Daochong spent all his money yesterday, he decided to spend the next few days crazily studying the spiritual brain and thoroughly understand the spiritual base programming. With the programming foundation of his previous life, he would comprehend the way of spiritual sequence in this life. Li Daochong felt that he was about to touch the most crucial part of spiritual base programming. Once he understood it, he would be able to use the spiritual brain to make all kinds of spiritual cards and rune cards. Spiritual cards were widely used in all kinds of spiritual machinery and equipment. Some magical equipment also used them. They were a kind of basic component. Rune cards, to put it bluntly, were multi-purpose consumables, mainly used for healing, exorcism, and attack. The best way to make spiritual cards and rune cards was to use the spiritual brain to design the spiritual sequence, and then use the array. It was transmitted. Spiritual sequence master, refiner, and pharmacist were the three most profitable professions in the cultivation civilization. If you want to cultivate, you have to make money first. If you don't have money, you can't cultivate. If you can't cultivate, how can you become the strongest cultivator? Just imagine it? Li Daochong had already planned out his future path. He would first become a spiritual sequence master, then make spiritual cards and rune cards to make money. Then, he would use the money he earned to buy dark ghosts that had their soul consciousness erased. Before reaching Foundation establishment, it was unrealistic to hunt dark ghosts himself. It was too dangerous, and there was the danger of losing his life at any time. It was best to buy ready-made dark ghosts to absorb in the early stages. How could he have the time to undergo 2 months of special training? Time was too precious for him. He had to master the spiritual base programming as soon as possible and become a spiritual sequence master. With the hot-blooded upgrader, it was easy for Li Daochong to cultivate purely. How to make money was the most pressing matter at the moment. Li Daochong flatly refused. Chu Qianyue was stunned. This brat's brain was really not that bright. Who would refuse a specially invited lecturer's special training? Especially for a weak student, it was a huge opportunity, an opportunity to change the wheel of fate. Do you know how many students in Profound Firmament University wish to receive my special one-on-one training? Chu Qianyue looked at Li Daochong as if his brain had been flooded with water. Teacher Chu, then you can look for them. I really don't have time. With that, Li Daochong was about to leave. Stop. Chu Qianyue's tone turned cold. Is there anything else? Teacher Chu. Li Daochong turned his head and asked. It's fine if you don't want to follow my special training. You have to pay for the damage testing device, the strengthened healing spirit fluid, and the weightlessness room number 5 that I used to treat you today. There is no free lunch in this world. Chu Qianyue said indifferently. Li Daochong was a bit confused. But then he thought about it. As long as he could become a spiritual sequence master, he wouldn't be afraid of not having money. Previously, he had no choice but to go today because he was threatened. In the end, he suffered so much. What was the point of this legendary lecturer holding onto his weakness? Fine. Tell me, how much is it? Li Daochong gritted his teeth and asked. He still had 75,000 origin coins in his pocket. At worst, he could take it all out to pay. After all, after his fake marriage with Xiao Shima next month, he still had 100,000 origin coins and 80 spirit stones. It was enough for his next semester's tuition and to buy a house. Moreover, as long as he became a spiritual sequence master, he wouldn't be afraid of not having money. A spiritual strength testing device costs 170,000 origin coins. The strengthened healing spirit fluid used for you is a high-quality one produced by Tianyuan Company. A total of 200 liters is used. 1 liter costs 21,000 origin coins. The weightlessness room number 5 has been remodeled. The rental fee is 10,000 origin coins. The total is 580,000 Federation coins. Please pay now. Chu Qianyue played it down. Her beautiful eyes narrowed slightly as she looked at Li Daochong. What? 580,000 Federation coins? Li Daochong cried out. Why don't you go rob a bank? The testing device costs 170,000 origin coins, but the healing spirit fluid costs 2,000 origin coins per liter? How is that possible? The best strengthened healing spirit fluid on the market costs no more than 500 origin coins per liter, and that's the best. Li Daochong thought so in his heart, but he didn't dare to say it out loud. Chu Qianyue was a lecturer in Profound Firmament University, second only to an associate professor. She held a lot of power. If he offended her, he definitely wouldn't have a good ending. His current situation was already very difficult. If he offended a specially invited lecturer who was very likely to become an honorary professor, he wouldn't be able to stay in Profound Firmament University any longer. How could the libraries outside compare to Profound Firmament University's library? If he wanted to become a spiritual sequence master, Profound Firmament University's library was definitely the best choice. Seeing that you're a student of our university, I've already given you a discount. 580,000 origin coins is the minimum. Chu Qianyue said expressionlessly. Teacher Chu, how can the strengthened healing spirit fluid be so expensive? Li Daochong was anxious. How is it not possible? The strengthened healing spirit fluid itself isn't cheap. After I bought it, I made a special concoction. If I were to sell it outside, it would cost at least 3,000 origin coins per liter. I'll give you 2,000 origin coins with a 60% discount, and you still think it's expensive? Chu Qianyue said with a serious face. You're ruthless, I admit defeat. Li Daochong clenched his teeth and said, Can you give me a down payment first? As for the rest, I'll pay 50,000 origin coins per month. You can count it as interest. Student Li, I'm sorry, but we don't accept credit. If you don't pay now, I'll inform the teaching office and the security department. They'll report you for damaging public property without compensation and violating the Federation's cultivation law. You'll have to bear legal responsibility. Buying without paying is considered fraud and robbery. The maximum sentence is 10 years in prison. Chu Qianyue shrugged. Li Daochong was dumbfounded. Coercion, a naked coercion. However, if you're willing to train with me, I'll be your training partner. I'll pay you 10,000 Federation coins each time. After 58 days, you'll be able to pay off this debt. Chu Qianyue continued. Li Daochong knew that he was being cheated, but there was nothing he could do. With Chu Qianyue's status, if she really wanted to report him, she would definitely be able to catch him. Plus, his current situation was special. If this matter came out, he would definitely be arrested by the Security Bureau and sent to prison. He had no choice. Can I only train for half a day? Li Daochong had no choice but to ask. Half a day should be enough for him to study. Chu Qianyue didn't answer immediately. She thought for a moment and said, If your performance is good, you can. Okay, it's a deal. Li Daochong was relieved. As long as she agreed, everything would be easy. After leaving the training hall, Li Daochong prepared to go home directly. There were many things to do. The parts of the floating pickup needed to be replaced, and the old models of spiritual computers needed to be repaired. Chapter 34. Li Daochong, go to the spiritual nexus and read the news. Your father's case has taken a major turn. Li Daochong's expression froze when he saw the message. He couldn't react in time. A few seconds later, he clicked on his wristwatch and entered the spiritual nexus. Because Li Daochong didn't have a virtual spiritual nexus ID, he couldn't log in as a virtual spiritual nexus mirror. He could only stand in the entrance hall and read the bullet comments on the spiritual nexus. All the front pages were about his father, Li Tianyang. Some were rehabilitated, some were cleared, and some were exposing the truth. The headlines were all eye-catching. Shocking news. Li Tianyang's defection reversed. Li Tianyang, commander of the Sirius Third Army, returned to Blue Bay Star. Secrets of the defector. One of the two commanders of the Federation's northern territory colluded with the enemy, and the other was demonized. Li Tianyang's path of humiliation. Li Tianyang, commander of the Federation, endured humiliation and hid his courage for 100 days. A few minutes later, Li Daochong logged out of the spiritual nexus. He didn't need to read the message one by one. All he needed to know was that his father's name as a traitor had been cleared. However, everything had happened so fast and so suddenly that Li Daochong felt that it was unreal. He couldn't help but feel that something was wrong. If his father's name was cleared, all the problems that Li Daochong was facing right now would be solved. All the humiliation he had suffered before would be erased. Those who had ostracized and bullied Li Daochong would come to Li Daochong on their own accord and beg for mercy. Li Tianyang's ruthless methods were known by everyone in Blue Bay Star. Whoever dared to bully his son would be courting death. However, Li Daochong had a vague feeling that things weren't that simple. Otherwise, why didn't the Li family just drive a luxurious hovercar to school to welcome him? His first and second uncles, as well as the elders, who had chased him out of the house, would definitely fight to apologize to him. They would say things like, "I knew your father was innocent. Daochong, don't blame the elders for what they did to you. They were forced by the situation. Xiaochong, I watched you grow up. My heart was bleeding when I chased you out of the house. Eldest nephew, you have to understand my difficulties. Everything I do is for the sake of the clan's interests. I have no choice but to do this." Li Daochong's mind flashed with the faces of his family's higher-ups who came to persuade him. But none of this happened. Qiao Shima was the first to inform him of the news, not the Li family. As one of the 4 major families, the Li family's information network was much wider and more sensitive than Qiao Shima's. The Indigo Bay Star's 4 great families should have already known about it a few days ago. Li Daochong quickly analyzed the situation in his mind. All the signs indicated that his father, Li Tianyang, had only been cleared of the charges. Everything else was still unknown. The Li family hadn't revealed any information about Li Tianyang being reinstated as the head of the family. This was very strange. Li Daochong narrowed his eyes. According to the news on the Spirit intranet, his father should have returned to the Blue Bay Star. He had only found out about it through the news. He sighed in his heart and walked out of the school gate. He took the public hovercar and headed in the direction of the Li family. Zhao Peng was lying on the hospital bed. His body was wrapped in gauze like a mummy. Although he had been soaked in spirit liquid, it was a pity that it was low-grade and his recovery was still very slow. Zhao Peng looked at the news on the screen and forgot about the pain in his body. His face was pale and he was scared out of his wits. Li Tianyang had returned and his charges had been cleared. He had been framed. Zhao Peng had been lying in bed for the past few days, gritting his teeth in hatred. He was ready to take revenge on Li Daochong after his injuries were healed. But at this time, he didn't even have the courage to look for Li Daochong again, let alone take revenge. Everyone in the Blue Bay Star knew what kind of person Li Tianyang was. It was unreasonable for him to cover up. Once Li Daochong returned to the Li family, Zhao Peng would be nothing in his eyes. Zhao Peng was so scared that he forgot the pain in his body. He turned on his wristwatch and immediately contacted Zhan Honglai. "Young Master Zhan, I've helped you with so many things. You must help me this time. I want to leave the Blue Bay Star." "Leave? Why are you leaving?" "Li Tianyang will chop me into a meat patty." "Li Tianyang? Don't worry, he won't. Young Master Zhan, don't you know? Li Tianyang's charges have been cleared, and he returned to the Blue Bay Star early this morning. Of course I know Li Tianyang is back. He's just a cripple. What are you afraid of?" "Cripple? Yes, Li Tianyang's Jin Dan is broken, his spirit base is dissolved, and he's seriously injured. He's about to die. What are you afraid of?" "Really? Nonsense, how can my news be fake? Take care of your injuries. When you're better, I'll give you a qi-stimulating pill. It can quickly raise your cultivation to the 5th level of qi refining." "Qi-stimulating pill? Young Master Zhan, won't eating that affect my foundation? Pringzi, you know better than me how much weight you have. How much potential can you have? Your foundation doesn't exist at all. It's better to use some extreme methods to raise your cultivation. As long as you follow me, entering the qi gathering stage won't be a problem." "Okay, that's it." Zhan Honglai turned off his wristwatch. His face revealed a trace of annoyance. Li Tianyang's rehabilitation was definitely bad news for him. Even if Li Tianyang was crippled, the Li family was bound to summon Li Daochong back. Once Li Daochong became a member of the Li family, his plan to get rid of Li Daochong would not be so easy. Zhang Honglai raised his wine cup and took a big gulp. His plan to get Qiao Shima had changed again. Tianyuan City's main street. Li Daochong stood outside the grand gate of the Li mansion. This was the place where he grew up. A few months ago, he was mercilessly kicked out, and no one tried to speak up for him. Li Tianyang had been the head of the Li family for many years and had monopolized the power. As the clan grew, there were all kinds of people. In addition, Li Tianyang did things swiftly and decisively. He never said much to others, causing many of the higher-ups to lose face. In recent years, Li Tianyang had spent too much energy and money on Li Daochong. The higher-ups finally could not sit still, and several conflicts broke out between them. However, Li Tianyang was too strong. In the end, they had no choice but to swallow their anger and retreat. However, after Li Tianyang's accident, everyone kicks a man who is down. The higher-ups vented all the resentment they had accumulated over the years. Li Daochong did not have a good impression of these cold-blooded relatives who did not care about right or wrong and only cared about their own interests. They were worse than strangers. It was good to live outside with Yinping. The gate of the Li family was wide open. Many of the clansmen had rushed into the Li mansion. The news had obviously spread, and they all came back to take a look. If Li Tianyang really wanted to come back, no matter what method he used, his final destination would be the Li mansion. Li Daochong's expression revealed a hint of coldness. His father's crime had been cleared, and he had no more worries. He no longer had to act like a fool, and he no longer had to hide his strength. His father had betrayed the army, and his son had pretended to be a fool to hide his strength. There were too many places to make a fuss about. He could even play Li Daochong to death. Now, none of these existed. His father had not betrayed the army, betrayed the country, or committed those horrible crimes. No matter what state Li Daochong was in, he could not make a fuss about it. Li Daochong was still not used to pretending to be a fool. It was best to be himself. Li Daochong's expression was calm as he slowly walked through the gate of the Li mansion. Li Daochong's appearance immediately attracted the attention of many of the clansmen. Of the thousands of people in the Li family, there was almost no one who did not know of Li Daochong. Li Tianyang had been at the peak of his power, but it was because he had given birth to such a foolish son that his reputation had been ruined. In the eyes of most of the Li family, Li Daochong was the main culprit behind the decline of the Li family. If not for his birth, Li Tianyang would not have failed to break through, and would not have been stuck at the early stage of Jindan, unable to break through. He would also not have been distracted by this useless fool, causing him to ignore the affairs of the clan. Perhaps this was not enough to be hated by the clansmen. It was just that Li Daochong had not lived up to expectations, and his reputation in the clan was not very good. He was lecherous and stupid. Just these 2 points alone were enough to cause him to be despised. Thus, when the clansmen saw Li Daochong walk into the Li mansion, their eyes were filled with contempt and disdain. If not for the news of Li Tianyang's return, Li Daochong would probably have been kicked out before he even stepped through the gate. Li Daochong ignored the gazes all around him and quickened his step. He only wanted to see his father, Li Tianyang, as soon as possible. The Li mansion's discussion hall, which was usually relatively quiet, was now filled with a sea of people. Several cultivators wearing Federation cultivator uniforms stood solemnly. A field officer was pushing Li Tianyang, who was sitting in a wheelchair. The officer faced the Li family's first elder, Li Longbo, and said, "We have sent Regiment Commander Li Tianyang back. Although Regiment Commander Li Tianyang's crimes have been cleared, he still violated military discipline. He exposed the merits of the 2 commanders-in-chief and indiscriminately killed the innocent. He also killed several officers who were not implicated, including one who was the grandson of a Federation member. Regiment Commander Li Tianyang has both merits and demerits. Our army has decided to remove Regiment Commander Li Tianyang from all military positions. He is innocent and has no merits. He will be discharged from the army as an ordinary soldier." After speaking, the officer turned around and left with the other officers. Every member of the Li family, both inside and outside the discussion hall, heard this and were all dumbfounded. When they received the news, they originally came to welcome the return of the head of the Li family. When they saw the news, they thought that Li Tianyang would return home with glorious military exploits, and that the Li family would use this opportunity to once again become the head of the 4 great families of Blue Bay Star. Who would have thought that this would be the result? Li Tianyang was sitting in a wheelchair. He was directly advised to retire from the army, and he was even discharged in the lowest rank. The Li family's proud and fragile hearts completely collapsed. Many of the collateral family members immediately left after hearing this, and the direct family members who didn't have much power also left. Only the 3 elders, the acting head of the family, and the chief steward were left in the discussion hall. First elder Li Longbo, second elder Li Mubai, and third elder Li Qibin. They were all Li Tianyang's uncles. The acting head of the family, Li Tianhe, was Li Tianyang's older brother, and the chief steward, Li Tianxing, was Li Tianyang's younger brother. The 5 of them were the highest representatives of the Li family. After everyone left, the 5 of them looked at each other in dismay. In reality, they had already known everything that had happened yesterday. Thus, they didn't show any surprise on their faces. They had already mentally prepared themselves, and they had already discussed how to settle Li Tianyang down last night. "Tianyang, you've worked hard this time. The family still has a piece of land in the western district that needs someone to look after. It's perfect for you to retire. What do you think?" Li Tianhe asked meaningfully. It didn't matter whether Li Tianyang agreed or not. Li Tianyang had long known that this would be the result. He understood his uncles and brothers all too well. They couldn't wait to see him become a laughingstock. He was already crippled, and he probably didn't have much time left. Nothing in the world mattered anymore. All he needed to do was peacefully live out his last days. Li Tianyang had no desires. If it weren't for Li Daochong, he wouldn't even want this piece of land. It could be considered the last of his inheritance to his son. If he didn't want it, the Li family wouldn't have given it to Li Daochong. No objections. "It's decided then," Li Tianyang said straightforwardly. "Good. I'll have someone send you there." Li Tianhe didn't expect Li Tianyang to agree so readily. He couldn't help but smile. His position as acting head of the family was set in stone. Chapter 35. Li Daochong's appearance surprised the upper echelons of the Li family. This idiot actually knew to come back and pick up his father. His brain knows how to turn? That's not easy. Li Tianhe smiled. That's fine. Since that house is for your father's retirement, it will be yours in the future. You and your father haven't seen each other for a long time, so we won't disturb you. Tomorrow, we will announce to the public that you and your father have been reinstated as members of the Li family. Li Daochong didn't listen to Li Tianhe at all. He walked straight to Li Tianyang and pushed his wheelchair out. He didn't want to stay in this place for even a second longer. Li Tianyang was seriously injured. He thought it would be Li Qingyao who came to pick him up. He didn't expect it to be Li Daochong. This idiot son still remembered him as his father. He didn't raise him in vain. Li Daochong pushed Li Tianyang out of the Li residence. But when they walked out of the Li residence and into another street, 2 people flew out of the void. One was an old man and the other was a middle-aged man. The old man had a black spear under his feet. The middle-aged man had a silver sword under his feet. They were flying on their swords. Their cultivations were unfathomable. Li Daochong felt an invisible pressure hit him in the face, making him unable to move. His chest was stuffy and his breath was short. He felt indescribably uncomfortable. He felt like he was sinking into the depths of the sea, suppressed by the terrifying water pressure. He could be crushed to pieces at any time. Cough, cough. Li Tianyong coughed violently. A trace of loneliness flashed through his eyes. How could this kind of pressure make him uncomfortable? But now, not only was he uncomfortable, but his injuries had also worsened. Li Tianyong, you also have a day like this? The heavens have eyes. Back then, you took Yun'er away, but didn't treat her well. You even let her die in the Hades. You've finally received your retribution. The middle-aged man looked at Li Tianyong with satisfaction. Brother Yen Zhongli, you still can't let it go. No wonder you've been stuck at the foundation establishment stage for so long and still can't break through. Li Tianyong laughed. Humph, why can't I let it go? I just feel bad for Yun'er. So this is the stupid son that you and Yun'er gave birth to. He is indeed stupid. Yen Zhongli snorted coldly and looked at Li Daochong. That snort made Li Daochong feel as if someone had struck him hard in the chest. His blood and qi churned, and he almost vomited blood. I'm relieved to see you like this. Your glabella is black and your heart is white. You don't have long to live. Li Tianyong, I'm relieved to see you like this. I'll attend your funeral. Yen Zhongli flew into the sky after he finished speaking. Li Tianyong turned to the old man. Qiu Xiong, are you here to laugh at me too? Qiu Xiong stroked his beard and shook his head. I'm not here to laugh at you. I'm here to tell you to scram. If you don't want to die, you'd better scram out of Blue Bay Star as soon as possible and find a corner to spend the rest of your life. The Gu family won't find trouble with you then. Otherwise, you and your son will die a horrible death. Li Tianyong's gaze turned cold. You dare to threaten me? Qiu Xiong raised his hand and swung it. Li Daochong was shocked. He took a step forward and stood in front of Li Tianyong to protect him. Slap. There was a crisp sound. Li Daochong's face was slapped hard. He slapped his face through the air. You hit my son. Qiu Xiong, you're courting death. Li Tianyong ignored his serious injuries and stood up from his wheelchair. His aura suddenly changed, and a majestic spirit energy burst out. Qiu Xiong jumped in fright and flew back more than 10 meters. He looked at Li Tianyong with fear. Li Tianyong, don't play with fire. Your Jin Dan is broken. If you continue to circulate your qi, you'll immediately die. Li Tianyong stood proudly with his head held high. He didn't look weak at all. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. If you have the guts, slap me again. Qiu Xiong's turbid eyes flashed. He sneered. Slapping your son in front of you is enough for me to vent my anger. I've already passed on the Gu family's message. I won't lower myself to the level of a lunatic like you. You'll suffer in the future. With that, Qiu Xiong flew into the sky. A few seconds later, Li Tianyong confirmed that Qiu Xiong had indeed left. He collapsed in his wheelchair and coughed violently. Dad! Li Daochong supported Li Tianyong. It's okay. He won't die. Let's go. Li Tianyong patted Li Daochong's shoulder. Li Daochong stood up and looked in the direction that the old man flew. He pushed his wheelchair and continued to walk forward. The father and son disappeared at the end of the street under the afterglow of the setting sun. After walking for several blocks, the father and son did not speak. Li Tianyong was now in his twilight years. He no longer had the ability to protect his foolish son. What happened just now was the best example. In the future, this kind of thing would happen frequently. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Li Daochong didn't know what to say. He just wanted to continue pushing his father. Little Chong, the Western District is far away. Aren't you tired pushing me like this? Let's take the car. Although I'm in dire straits now, I still have the money to take a car. Li Tianyong saw that Li Daochong didn't respond and just continued pushing him. He was worried that his foolish son would start acting silly again. Li Daochong pushed Li Tianyong all the way. Looking at the gray hair behind his head, he felt a little choked up. Dad, I've already sent a message to Yin Ping. She'll drive over to pick us up in a while. You've been taking care of me all these years. Let me push you a little longer today. You must have suffered a lot recently. Take a good look at the scenery along the way and take a rest. Li Tianyang had a head of black hair a few months ago. He was only 45 years old and was a Jindan cultivator. His lifespan was far longer than that of ordinary people. In just a few months, his hair had turned white and there were wrinkles on his face. It was obvious that he had suffered serious internal injuries. Li Daochong felt that there was a very strong aura of death in Li Tianyang's body. His vitality was fading bit by bit. Li Daochong's orderly response stunned Li Tianyang for a moment. He turned to look at his son. His face was still the same, but the foolishness of the past had disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a kind of steadiness and calmness that he had never had before. Little Chong, Dad has let you down. I've let you suffer. Li Tianyang said with emotion. Dad, don't say that. You're the one who has let me down the most in this world. Don't worry, I'll definitely find a way to heal your injuries and let you return to the Jindan stage. Li Daochong's calm voice carried an unshakable firmness. After a simple conversation, Li Tianyang realized that he didn't seem to recognize this foolish son of his. However, he liked this kind of son. Sitting in the wheelchair, Li Tianyang's old face that shouldn't have appeared at his age showed a gratified smile. After walking for a while, Yinping drove the levitation pickup truck according to the location sent by Li Daochong and found the father and son pair. Seeing that Li Tianyang was still alive, Yinping couldn't control herself and cried, Master, you're back. Yes, I'm back. Thank you for taking care of little Chong these days. Master, sob, please don't say that. It's all Yinping's responsibility. Yinping cried. Silly child, what are you crying for? You should be happy to see your master. Li Tianyang scratched Yinping's little nose. Yes, happy. Yinping is very happy. Sob. Yinping laughed and cried. The three of them got on the levitation pickup truck, and Li Daochong drove directly to the Li family's house that had been abandoned for many years. It was several blocks away from where he and Yinping lived. In the past, the Li family used it as a warehouse, but they stopped using it after the Xiqing district became a slum. The entire house was very large, with more than a dozen rooms and 2 courtyards, one big and one small. The big courtyard was more than 200 square meters, and the small courtyard was only a few dozen square meters. It had been abandoned for a long time, and it was similar to a zombie house. The courtyard was overgrown with weeds, and there were dozens of small bamboos scattered around the courtyard. There were a few sycamore trees in the middle. Yinping busied herself as soon as she entered the house, and she quickly tidied up a room. Li Daochong took Li Tianyang's pulse and found that there were 3 different types of death aura in his father's body. 2 were weak and 1 was strong. These 3 types of death aura intertwined and complemented each other, slowly eating away at his father's vitality. Father, have you been possessed by a dark ghost? Li Daochong asked. No. If you want to possess me, it's impossible unless you're a dark ghost. I was ambushed, and a soul catcher almost took my Jindan. Although I countered the soul catcher, I was still infected by the death aura. The Jindan was corroded, and its spirit base was broken. There's death aura left in my body, and I'm already a cripple, Li Tianyang replied. As he spoke, he seemed to have aged a little. Li Tianyang had been so glorious in the past. 20 years ago, he was the #1 genius of the Blue Bay Star. As a Jindan cultivator, he had fallen to his current state. No matter how carefree he was, the difference between heaven and hell was something he couldn't let go of. Li Daochong frowned slightly. Li Tianyang was right, but when he was taking his pulse, the blood-boiling level-up device had given him a notification. It had discovered the power of the soul catcher's remnant soul. It was this remnant soul power that had corroded Li Tianyang's Jindan and shattered its spirit base. Father, bear with it. I'll see if I can get rid of the death aura in your body, Li Daochong said seriously. Little Chong, I know you're different from before, but you're still far from being able to resist the death aura in my body. Even a Yuanian cultivator would be helpless against my injuries. Don't waste your spirit chi in vain, lest you hurt yourself instead. Father is fine. As long as you're fine, that's more important than anything. Li Tianyang stopped him. Father, trust me this once. Li Daochong's expression was focused. The soul catcher was indeed not something Li Daochong could deal with. Even if it was just a remnant soul, it wasn't something a mere chi refinement cultivator could deal with. Jin Dan cultivators had to be careful when dealing with soul catcher. If they weren't careful, they would fall for it. Even with the blood-boiling level-up device, Li Daochong didn't have absolute confidence that he could get rid of the remnant soul in Li Tianyang's body. However, even if it hurt him, he still had to try. The remnant soul had caused too much damage to Li Tianyang's body. It couldn't be left alive. It would be very dangerous to leave it alive for even a second longer. Li Tianyang still wanted to stop him, but Li Daochong had already transferred spirit chi into Li Tianyang's body. Father, concentrate the spirit chi in your dantian. We'll deal with that death chi together. You might feel more uncomfortable, so bear with it. Li Daochong's expression was serious. All right, son. I'll listen to you today. Come at me. I won't even frown if I have to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of flames, let alone this. Li Tianyang was only halfway through his sentence when a pain that came from the depths of his soul stopped him abruptly. Ugh! Even though Li Tianyang could bear the bone-scraping pain, he still let out a muffled groan. His expression was twisted in pain. A few minutes later, Li Tianyang felt his soul being ignited. It was as if he was being tortured in purgatory. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. Li Daochong's body was trembling non-stop. Not long after, he was already drenched in sweat. White mist rose from his hair and his face became pale. The remnant soul's counterattack was shockingly powerful. Even the blood-boiling level-up device couldn't control it. Li Daochong was shocked. He thought that the blood-boiling level-up device was invincible. It turned out that it wasn't. How could a soul catcher's remnant soul be so powerful? Li Daochong quickly realized that the blood-boiling level-up device was upgraded according to his strength. Last time, when he dealt with the Black Wraith binding spirit in the middle-aged man's body, he had felt a little strained. However, after absorbing that Black Wraith binding spirit, absorbing stronger spirit ghosts and wolf ghosts was not as difficult. From this, it could be seen that the blood-boiling level-up device was also gradually upgrading. If he absorbed too much of a powerful dark ghost, the blood-boiling level-up device might not be able to absorb the dark ghost. Instead, it might be devoured by the dark ghost. That would be the end of him. Li Daochong focused 120% of his mind to deal with the remnant soul. If not for his powerful mind, he would have been destroyed by the remnant soul. Of course, Li Tianyang's support was more important. Even though he was seriously injured, the quantity and quality of his spiritual energy was far above Li Daochong's. He blocked most of the backlash. As a golden core cultivator, even if Li Tianyang didn't know what his son was doing, he knew that he had to bear the brunt of the backlash. Otherwise, with his son's meager amount of spiritual energy, he would definitely be killed by the death chi. The entire room, with Li Tianyang as the center, emitted a terrifying deathly aura. Silver Bottle wanted to push the door open, but was directly sent flying. Li Daochong shouted, "Silver Bottle, don't come in. Stay away." "Yes, young master." Silver Bottle didn't know what was going on. She hurriedly responded and didn't dare to approach the room. 10 minutes passed. 20 minutes passed. An hour passed. Li Daochong's body was getting hotter and hotter, while Li Tianyang's body was getting colder and colder. The father and son, one fire and one ice, were enduring unimaginable pain. The two looked at each other, but both smiled. Son, let's kill that thing together with me. Okay. The father and son were of the same mind. Constriction. 9 thorns beep. A familiar beep sounded in the depths of Li Daochong's mind. Soul Catcher's remnant soul killed. Soul power gained. Host leveled up to level 8. The remnant's soul power finally couldn't resist the suction of the whirlpool and was sucked in by the hot-blooded upgrader. Li Daochong only felt the spiritual energy in his body grow crazily, like bamboo shoots after a rain. The 5th spirit meridian was instantly activated and expanded, followed by the 6th, 7th, and 8th spirit meridian. The whole process only stopped when the 8th spirit meridian was slightly full. 7 of the 9 basic spirit meridians in Li Daochong's body were activated. Only the last 2 were still in a dormant state. The other 7 were thick and powerful, more than twice the size of a normal spirit meridian. What was incredible was that Li Daochong directly rose 2 levels this time, skipping 7 levels and instantly reaching level 8. Qi Refinement Level 8. Li Daochong wasn't the only one who benefited. Li Tianyang's death aura disappeared, and the broken spirit base healed a little. The broken Jin Dan slowly gathered on the spirit base placenta. Although it didn't condense back into a Jin Dan, it was no longer in a melting state. It regained a trace of vitality. Li Tianyang's cultivation fell to Qi Refinement Level 7 after he was seriously injured, but now it recovered to Qi Refinement Level 10. Ha ha, I'm saved. I'm saved. Li Tianyang looked up and laughed. The haze from before was swept away. Chapter 36. Li Daochong fainted for an entire night and only woke up the next morning. The moment he opened his eyes, everything around him seemed to become exceptionally clear. Not only that, the hidden energy left by Zhan Honglai on Li Daochong's left shoulder had completely disappeared. When he reached the 6th layer of Qi refining, the pain had lessened a lot, but it was still there. On the day he was tortured by Chu Qianyue, the pain had intensified and in the end, it had even dislocated. Fortunately, the spirit liquid that Chu Qianyue gave Li Daochong to treat his injuries was of the highest quality, so it was connected back. But now, Li Daochong could not feel any pain in his left shoulder at all, and he no longer had the feeling that it would dislocate at any time. Li Daochong revealed a faint smile. It seemed that when his cultivation surpassed Zhan Honglia's, the hidden energy left behind by Zhan Honglai was naturally eliminated. Stretching his arm, Li Daochong sat up and found himself lying on a simple wooden bed. Yinping was lying on the head of the bed, tears hanging from the corners of her eyes, and her face was haggard. Whenever something happened to Li Daochong, this girl would be scared out of her wit. She would guard Li Daochong closely, afraid that something would happen to him. Li Daochong stared at Yinping, who was sleeping soundly, and felt a bit of heartache. No one would feel comfortable lying on the head of the bed like this for an entire night. Li Daochong got up and picked up Yinping, preparing to put her on the bed and let her sleep more comfortably. But just as he picked up Yinping, the girl woke up. A pair of clear eyes blinked as she looked at Li Daochong, her beautiful face flushed red. Yinping's heart was in a mess, and she said in a small voice, "Young master, Yinping is still young, I can't." When she said this, Li Daochong almost threw Yinping away. What the hell? What was this girl thinking? Li Daochong wanted to explain, but he swallowed the words back. He was afraid that no matter how he explained, it would be useless and would only make things worse. Li Daochong didn't say anything. He put the silver bottle on the bed and covered himself with a thin blanket. He coughed and said, "You sleep a little longer. I'll make breakfast this morning." Yinping answered obediently. She shyly looked at Li Daochong with her big eyes. "Young master, wait a few more years, go to sleep. Don't think too much," Li Daochong urged. "Oh." Li Daochong turned around and covered his face with one hand. "Why did I do that? This girl's servant mindset is simply driving me crazy." Awkward 2F*King awkward. Li Daochong quickly walked out of the house to prepare breakfast. Li Tianyang also consumed a lot of energy yesterday. After Li Daochong fainted, he felt his pulse and confirmed that he was fine. He also went to bed early. After waking up, Li Tianyang found that the spirit base in his body had stabilized, and his body was slowly recovering. As for how much he could recover, he could only leave it to fate. However, this was already the best result. Li Tianyang guessed that his son must have had some fortuitous encounter while he was away. On the path of cultivation, talent, resources, and fortuitous encounters, as long as one could have any one of them, it would greatly help one's cultivation in the future. It could even change one's body. Li Tianyang felt like he had fallen into hell yesterday and would never be reincarnated. However, in one night, he was reborn. Life was like a dream. In the morning, Li Daochong personally cooked and prepared a sumptuous breakfast. Between his appetite and Li Tianyang's, the portions were naturally quite sufficient. During breakfast, Yin Ping slept very soundly. Li Daochong didn't wake her up. This girl must have been watching over him all night and only slept when she couldn't take it anymore. It must have been hard on him. The father and son finished the 3 plates of sea beast meat and were only half full. After breakfast, Li Daochong went to school. Li Tianyang recuperated. His injuries needed to be healed, so he definitely wouldn't be able to move around in the short term. Thump, thump. In the weightlessness room number 5 of the training center, heavy crashing sounds were continuously heard throughout the whole morning. At 3:00 in the afternoon, Li Daochong walked out of the weightlessness room with trembling legs, holding the wall. Chu Qianyue increased the difficulty level, and Li Daochong fell into a struggle again. Fortunately, he broke through 2 levels yesterday and reached the 8th level of Qi refining. Under the nourishment of the spiritual energy, his body evolved. However, even if his body was strengthened after hundreds of heavy falls, he still couldn't avoid the pain all over his body. When it was over, Li Daochong almost couldn't stand up. He only felt better after drinking a bottle of recovery water given by Chu Qianyue. Li Daochong went out of the training center and went straight to the library. However, his legs didn't listen to him and he could only limp. Along the way, all the students who saw Li Daochong would inadvertently glance at him. "Hey, Li Daochong, that fool is going to change his life. I heard that his father, Li Tianyang, was not a rebel and was framed. It's said that he has been rehabilitated and the Federation no longer wants him." Change his life? Come on, didn't you read the news? Li Tianyang's merits offset his fault. He was forced to retire by the military and was seriously injured. He won't live long. Really? If Li Tianyang really dies, won't that fool be tortured to death? Not only is he stupid, he's also a pervert. Of course he'll be tortured. Yeah, last time he stuck out his ass in front of Qiao Shima in public. Many of Qiao Shima's admirers want to get even with him. From time to time, the passing students would talk about Li Daochong, and their voices were very loud. Li Daochong didn't care about the ostentatious pointing and talking. They could say whatever they wanted, as long as they didn't bother him. He just wanted to go to the library as soon as possible. Li Daochong couldn't walk fast. His legs were weak and he couldn't stand falling for a few hours. Chu Qianyue wasn't training him at all. She was clearly torturing him. This kid's walking is weird. Did he get beaten up? It's normal to get beaten up. Last time he cheated in a duel with Zhao Peng and Zhao Peng was seriously injured. Zhao Peng is a member of the biggest club in our school, the Green Wolf Club. I heard that the Green Wolf Club wanted to teach this kid a lesson. Someone must have taught him a lesson. TSK. Being targeted by the Green Wolf Club, this kid doesn't have the protection of his family and his father. He'll suffer. He'll be beaten to a pulp in the final exam. Now that he's beaten to a pulp, he'll be decomposed into fertilizer in the final exam. Wherever Li Daochong went, there were sounds of ridicule. However, he turned a deaf ear to them. His mind was full of spiritual-based programming. When he arrived at the library, he plunged into the sea of books, eagerly absorbing the nutrients in the books. The strength of his telekinesis continued to increase, and Li Daocheng's reading efficiency increased a lot. He read more than 10 books in one afternoon. When he returned home in the evening, Li Daocheng ate and drank to his heart's content and went into the room to fiddle with the old spiritual computers that had malfunctioned. During the day, Silver Bottle and Li Tianyang moved all the things in the rented room to this place. Each of them had a room, and there were more than 10 rooms left, which were temporarily empty. Li Daocheng planned to renovate these rooms when he had time. In the following days, Li Daocheng lived every day to the fullest, and he wished he could break himself apart. Li Daocheng became more and more accustomed to the training in the weightless room, and the speed of his progress was beyond imagination. After 5 days, he was completely adapted to the highest gravity shift. This was far beyond Chu Qianyue's expectations. She originally thought that this kid could adapt to it within 20 days. However, Li Daocheng only took 5 days. On the 6th day, when Li Daocheng jumped up and down in the weightless room with ease, Chu Qianyue's beautiful eyes, which rarely changed, actually flashed with a look of shock. In the past, Augustine had to endure 30 days in the weightless room for basic adaptation, and the frequency of changes at that time was not as high as now. On this day, when Li Daocheng effortlessly made a 360-degree turn and landed on the ground, the gravity shift stopped. Li Daocheng felt strange. "Teacher Chu, why did you stop? Did you finish practicing today?" As soon as he finished speaking, Li Daocheng felt a gust of wind behind his back. He was startled and instinctively bent down to dodge. Bang! But the speed was really too fast. Li Daocheng was hit, and his whole body flew out and fell flat on his face. Chu Qianyue did not give any warning, and the sneak attack was successful. Of course, Chu Qianyue controlled her cultivation level to the 5th layer of the aura refining realm because she estimated the strength of Li Daocheng's cultivation level. Last time when Li Daocheng passed out, Chu Qianyue tested his cultivation level, and the result was the 6th layer of the aura refining realm. Chu Qianyue felt that starting from the 5th layer of the aura refining realm was just right, and she could slowly lower her cultivation level later. Chu Qianyue was in the middle stage of the foundation building realm. Even if she controlled her strength to the 5th layer of the aura refining realm, she was still much stronger than the real 5th layer of the aura refining realm. The training of spatial perception was to fight in a chaotic space, to sense the changes in space, and not create any misconceptions or gaps. "Why did you hit me?" Li Daocheng got up and stared at Chu Qianyue and asked. "I hit you," Chu Qianyue said lightly. "You." Li Daocheng had just spat out a word when Chu Qianyue appeared in front of him and slapped him. Slap. Li Daocheng firmly grabbed Chu Qianyue's wrist. Huh! Chu Qianyue was stunned. This guy could see her move clearly. Chu Qianyue's eyes flickered. She underestimated him, but now she did not activate the gravity shift and was just in a normal state. What if they were in a disordered space? Chu Qianyue immediately activated the gravity shift, and the direction of gravity in the room changed immediately. The two of them kept changing up and down in the space. In the rapid change, Chu Qianyue kicked Li Daocheng, who raised his arm to block. Bang! The two of them separated. But Li Daocheng took the hit and immediately lost his direction, falling heavily on the plane where the gravity was. "Ms. Chu, if you hit me again, I'll fight back." Li Daocheng was anxious. "If you can hit me, today's training will end immediately, and I'll give you an extra 10,000 yuan training fee," Chu Qianyue said playfully. At this moment, she was actually a little excited. "That's what you said." Li Daocheng licked his lips and rushed up to hit him without saying a word. However, as soon as Li Daocheng moved, the direction of gravity had changed, and so did his center of gravity. Even though he adjusted, his punch missed and he almost fell down. Chu Qianyue seized the opportunity and punched Li Daocheng in the chest, knocking him to the ground. Li Daochong got up, but he didn't attack immediately. He gathered all his strength and pushed his spiritual energy to the peak. After dodging Chu Qianyue's 2 attacks, he kicked out. Chu Qianyue was as light as a swallow. Even if the gravity kept changing, it didn't affect her movement at all. She easily dodged Li Daochong's kick. When Li Daochong withdrew his kick, his whole body rushed out like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey. Chu Qianyue gritted her teeth. "Stinky boy, you dare to use this trick on me? See how I'll teach you a lesson." She wanted to grab Li Daochong's waist. Li Daochong's body paused. Chu Qianyue hit his vital part. Li Daochong snorted and grabbed Chu Qianyue's wrist. He grinned. "I fell into her trap." Grabbing her wrist, Li Daochong naturally wouldn't let go. He used both his hands and feet. Bang! He kicked Chu Qianyue's arm. "Ms. Chu, I hit you." Li Daochong smiled. Chu Qianyue's face was livid. She was too careless and fell into this boy's trap. But how could this guy be so fast? "Training is over," Chu Qianyue said unwillingly. Li Daochong immediately rushed out of the zero-gravity room and went to the library. However, not long after Li Daochong left, a small door in the corner of the zero-gravity room opened and an old man walked out. "Qianyue, you recently suspended classes because of this boy?" the old man asked puzzledly. If Li Daochong hadn't left, he would have been shocked to see this kind-looking old man. Chapter 37. For him? "Old Qian, you think too highly of that idiot. He has no talent, no ability, and he hasn't even developed his spiritual root. I'm not interested in him at all. The suspension is for me to concentrate on comprehending the power of space. He's just a tool for me to comprehend." Chu Qianyue said disdainfully. "Is that so?" Qian Chonghai asked with a smile. "Old Qian, you don't have to be so eccentric. Believe it or not," Chu Qianyue said and walked out of the zero-gravity room. "Qianyue, you haven't talked so much for a long time. It's abnormal," Qian Chonghai said with a thoughtful expression. Chu Qianyue didn't respond and went straight to the small door. "Qianyue, if that guy can enter the top 20 freshmen in the final exam, I'll give you the thing you want," Qian Chonghai said unhurriedly. Chu Qianyue stopped and slowly turned around. "Old Qian, are you serious?" Qian Chonghai smiled but didn't say anything. He just nodded. Chu Qianyue asked strangely, "You think that guy is good?" Qian Chonghai was still smiling without saying anything. He nodded again. Blue veins appeared on Chu Qianyue's forehead. "Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me." Qian Chonghai's turbid eyes flashed and he stopped smiling. "Qianyue, your clothes are torn." Puff. An arrow of blood spurted out from the old man's nose. Chu Qianyue lowered her head to take a look. She didn't know when, but a large hole had been torn at the waist of her robe. Her snow-white skin was brazenly exposed. She didn't even notice it. Was it done by that guy? Chu Qianyue showed an incredulous expression. Qian Chonghai took out a handkerchief and wiped his nose. His old hand trembled and he muttered to himself, not bad, really not bad." Hearing Qian Chonghai praise her exposed skin, Chu Qianyue's delicate and beautiful face burned with anger. This old man was getting more and more outrageous. He even dared to speak rudely to her and blatantly flirt with her. "Qian Chonghai, you shameless old man. You're courting death." After saying that, Chu Qianyue took out a flying sword. His whole body's spirit aura burst out with a loud rumble. He was about to attack Qian Chonghai. Qian Chonghai shouted, "Wait, I said that kid is not bad." Chu Qianyue's cold face finally softens. She puts away her flying sword and turns around to leave. Qian Chonghai chuckled. "Not bad." Bang! A flying hammer flew across the sky and smashed into Qian Chonghai's old face. Blood flowed from his nose and the old man's body trembled slightly. He fell to the ground with a thud and muttered in a low voice, "Call an ambulance." Chu Qianyue had already left. Today's special training ended early. Li Daochong did not go to the library. Was he going to buy a second-hand array from the second-hand market? Master. No matter how much theory he studied, it was useless without practice. Li Daochong felt that he should be able to make a grade 1 rune card, so he decided to buy some materials and go back to try it out. Time was very precious for Li Daochong. There were still more than 2 months before the final exam. He must get a good result. In the first semester of freshman year, Li Daochong's grades had been very stable and ranked last among all the students. If he did not do well in the final exam of this semester, Li Daochong would face the situation of repeating a grade or being expelled. Li Daochong originally did not attach much importance to the final exam. He did not even care whether he would still stay in Xiansong University after the end of this semester. He just wanted to be a fool, keep a low profile and grow stronger quickly. He wanted to be able to protect himself and Yinping while fulfilling his dreams step by step. When he had a certain strength, he would investigate Li Tianyang's matter. However, plans were not as good as changes. His father's situation had taken a turn for the better. Although he had been cleared of any wrongdoing, he had been seriously injured. Although the family had regained their status and name, they had actually marginalized and ignored Li Tianyang. After all, a cripple was dispensable to the family. The family's indifference made Li Daochong's heart cold. His father's former enemies came looking for him. If it was not for his father's bravery and fearlessness, that old man called Xiao Xiong would have done something. The rest of the people who had a grudge with Li Tianyang would probably appear one by one in the future. Right now, they were just in the observation stage. Those people were definitely not people that Li Daochong could deal with right now. Li Daochong knew that it was impossible to raise his strength to the same level as Li Tianyang in a short period of time. Even if he had the hot-blooded upgrader, it was impossible to raise his strength that fast. Moreover, whether it was cultivation or strength, even if it could be raised quickly, it could not be rushed. These days, Li Daochong already felt that he was rising a little too fast. His foundation was obviously not stable. Li Daochong felt that he was like a balloon that was being blown up quickly. His skin had already been stretched to the limit and could explode at any time. The hot-blooded upgrader only cared about constantly inflating the container. As for whether the container could bear it or not, it did not care at all. When Li Daochong had just reached the 8th level of qi refining a few days ago, his body had a very obvious feeling of swelling. It was very uncomfortable. His physical strength was too weak and could not bear the explosive increase of spiritual energy in his body. However, after the high-intensity training in the weightless room, Li Daochong's feeling of swelling had decreased a lot. Every day, he would fall down thousands of times, just like forging iron, tempering Li Daochong's body again and again. After the training, Chu Qianyue was not stingy. She would let the injured Li Daochong soak in the strengthened healing liquid so that Li Daochong's body could be healed in time. Otherwise, if he only tempered without healing, his body would only be left with hidden injuries and in the end, he would become disabled. Now that the situation had changed, Li Daochong had no choice but to replan his development path. In the past, he relied on his family and his father's powerful personal strength. Now, all of that had become a thing of the past. Without background and strength, those guys who had made enemies with his father in the past, even if they didn't kill you, they would definitely not feel good if they casually stepped on you a few times. In the short term, the fastest and most effective way to prevent the outside world from causing trouble for him and his father was to find a powerful backer. With a backer, those who wanted to cause trouble would naturally disappear, saving a lot of unnecessary dispute. The only backer Li Daochong could think of was Xiansong University, the #1 cultivation university in Blue Bay Star, to take him seriously. The end-of-term exam was the best way to get the school to take him seriously. As long as he showed enough potential, Xiansong University would naturally take him seriously. If he could enter the elite class or even the super class, then his status would be very different. It was still the same saying, talent was lacking everywhere. What the Shenghua Federation valued the most was talent, and the major universities were even more so. The threat of the Hades had never weakened. Every additional cultivator in the Federation's territory increased their capital and strength in the fight against the Hades by a bit, and the safety of the rear area would be guaranteed by a bit. Any cultivator was a precious asset to the Federation, and the major universities cherished talent as much as their own lives. They did their best to recruit good students and focus on nurturing students with potential. Therefore, the end-of-term exam this time was extremely important to Li Daochong. If he flunked it, the fate of himself, his father, and Silver Bottle would become unknown. It was very likely that they would sink into the abyss and never be able to turn things around. His father had had too many grudges with people in the past, and he himself had gotten into a lot of trouble because of Qiao Shima. Although that girl Silver Bottle didn't have much contact with the outside world, she just so happened to be growing more and more beautiful. The people who had been looking for trouble with him recently had all targeted her, wanting to take Silver Bottle for themselves. Card slaves didn't have human rights in the Federation's cultivation law. Whether they were raped or killed, they would only be punished for embezzlement or destruction of other people's property. This was a damned law. As long as the owner of the card slave didn't have enough strength, it meant that the card slave around them would have no protection at all. Li Daochong still wanted to wait for Silver Bottle to become an adult before giving her back her freedom. Then, he would find a good man for her to marry and live a normal life. This girl had been sold at the age of 6 and suffered a lot with him. He had to give her an explanation, or else Li Daochong wouldn't be at ease. In order to achieve this goal, he had to wait for Silver Bottle to become an adult. If he didn't have strength or background, Li Daochong knew that it was absolutely impossible to wait for Silver Bottle to become an adult so that she could get married. Li Daochong couldn't even deal with Zhang Honglai. Even if Li Daochong's cultivation had surpassed Zhang Honglia's, he still couldn't touch him. Zhang Honglai had a family and connections behind him. The Zhang family had several elders in the Qi gathering stage and a foundation establishment stage ancestor. Li Daochong wasn't afraid that Zhang Honglai would only deal with him. He was only afraid that he would deal with Silver Bottle. He couldn't always follow that girl 24/7. Moreover, even if Li Daochong followed him, if he was a Qi gathering stage expert, he would just be a piece of cake. Xiansong University didn't allow private fights, but outside the university, it wasn't the same thing. If they really wanted to take your life, there were many ways. Especially for cultivator families with medium strength and above, killing the current Li Daochong would be as easy as crushing an ant. On the other hand, if Li Daochong did well in the end-of-term exam and got the attention of the university, he would soar to the sky and become the focus of training. Once he had an identity, everything would be different. Backed by Xiansong University, one of the Federation's Project 199, anyone who wanted to cause trouble would have to consider whether they had the strength to do so. As the saying goes, one can enjoy the shade of a big tree. As for killing someone, that was even more impossible. If something really happened to Xiansong University's focus of training, not only would Xiansong University investigate to the end, even the Federation's Cultivation Security Bureau's special forces would also be involved in the investigation. The talents of the university were the pillars of the Federation. Daring to touch a pillar was like playing with fire. Therefore, the importance of the end-of-term exam to the current Li Daochong could be imagined. It could be said that it was the only chance for Li Daochong to reverse the situation. If he wanted to be truly valued by the university, it was basically useless if he didn't enter the top 20. Xiansong University's cultivation school had a total of over 5,000 freshmen. They were the most outstanding youths of Blue Bay Star. They were the best of the best, 1 in 1,000 people who had passed the college entrance exam. Entering the top 20 was easier said than done. There were over 100 people in the elite class and 15 in the superclass. Each of these geniuses was more abnormal than the other. Even though Li Daochong was already at the 8th level of qi refining, he didn't have a solid foundation and hadn't practiced any powerful technique. He had only relied on his cultivation base and the 2 techniques he had brought with him, the basic technique and the telekinesis battle technique. Li Daochong estimated that he might not even be able to beat a 5th-level qi refining student in the elite class, let alone top students like Zhan Honglai and Han Guo. There were still over 2 months before the end-of-term exam. Li Daochong didn't plan on increasing his spiritual energy anymore. The 8th level of qi refining was enough. Next, he had to build a solid foundation step by step and temper his body. Only by strengthening his body could his body contain more spiritual energy. He wanted to practice another technique, preferably one that could reach the mid-grade human level. As for the beginner technique, Li Daochong didn't plan on looking for another one. The basic technique he had brought with him was enough. Li Daochong had checked the price of a mid-grade human-level technique. The cheapest one would cost at least 200,000 Federation coins. If he wanted to buy it, he would have to make a talisman card or spirit card as soon as possible. Li Daochong thought as he walked out of the school gate. Chapter 38. Li Daochong was busy thinking about the editing of a spirit sequence and didn't see Zhan Honglai walking towards him. The scene from last time replayed itself. Li Daochong walked forward with his head lowered. He was only immersed in his own world as he coded. In the eyes of others, he looked like a coward. Zhan Honglai stopped in his tracks. The group of Green Wolf Society students behind him also stopped. Zhan Honglai looked at Li Daochong walking towards him and sneered. He was just looking for this kid. A week had passed, and he hadn't heard any news about Li Daochong and Qiao Shima canceling their engagement. This made him very angry. Zhan Honglai had already lost his patience with this fool and wanted to get rid of him quickly. Zhan Honglai was shocked by Li Tianyang's return. He thought that he wouldn't be able to make a move on Li Daochong. However, Zhan Honglai soon found out that Li Tianyang had become a cripple and was completely marginalized. He was demoted to a servant in the family, which was no different from being kicked out of the family. Someone in the Li family even spread the news that Li Tianyang's life and death had nothing to do with the family. "Young Master Zhan, isn't that Li Daochong?" A sharp-eyed youth in blue clothes beside Zhan Honglai asked. The others looked over and saw Li Daochong walking towards them with his head lowered. "Pring Zi is still lying in the hospital. Who wants to avenge him?" Zhan Honglai asked in a low voice. "Hee, don't fight with me. Young Master Zhan, I'll go. I've always been good at cleaning up trash." Chen Ming rubbed his hands and volunteered. Chen Ming, who looked fierce and was in the 4th stage of qi refinement, was famous among the freshmen. During last semester's exam, he was ranked around the last 100 in the elite class. His ranking wasn't worth mentioning. However, Chen Ming had seriously injured more than 10 people during the martial arts test. All the students who had encountered him had their arms and legs broken. The most serious one had not a single bone in his body that was intact. Chen Ming was the one with the most resounding reputation in the elite class. His ruthlessness could be seen from this. Many seniors knew that there was a broken bone ghostly hands Chen Ming among the freshmen. In the school, other than the top students of the elite class and the geniuses of the super class, the other students would hide far away when they saw Chen Ming. They didn't even dare to look at him, fearing that Chen Ming would target them and break their bones. Even if some of the students had a certain level of strength, they might not be afraid of Chen Ming in a one-on-one fight. However, they were terrified of the Green Wolf Society behind Chen Ming. The vice-captain, Zhan Honglai, was ranked 2nd in the elite class. He was at the peak of the 6th level of the qi refining stage. Before the end of term exam, he would definitely reach the 7th level of the Qi refining stage. The students couldn't afford to offend Chen-Ming, who was a bully in the school, so they could only hide. On the west side of Xian-Tsang University's gate was a green avenue. Most of the passers-by were students. Because this was the only way to get to the main city, there were a lot of students on the road. Chen-Ming rubbed his hands and walked towards Li Daochong. His eyes were fixed on Li Daochong, who was walking towards him with his head lowered. It was as if he was looking at a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Chen-Ming's face was filled with excitement. He could finally hear the heart-wrenching sound of broken bones. He couldn't wait any longer. He couldn't wait for the street to shrink so that he could appear in front of Li Daochong, grab his weak little arm, and gently break it. Gotcha! That sound was like praising my lord. Hallelujah! Chen-Ming's face was filled with a crazy expression. The students who saw Chen-Ming on the road all had a frightened expression and hid far away. Why are you pulling me? A student who wasn't paying attention was pulled by his friend and almost fell down. Hide a little. Can't you see that Chen-Ming is coming? His friend whispered. Chen-Ming, so scary. That student was so frightened that he immediately shouted. His friend covered his mouth. 2 students who were so scared that they peed their pants stood in the corner, trembling. They prayed that Chen-Ming didn't see them. There were many students on the road and they were a hindrance. Chen-Ming impatiently said, "Scram to the side. If anyone dares to block the road, I will break their arm." Immediately, a path was opened up on the road. A few students were wearing headphones. It was unknown whether they were listening to music or studying. In any case, they didn't hear Chen-Ming's warning. Chen-Ming grabbed the student in front and threw him out. That student didn't know what happened and his face hit the wall. He was about to explode when he saw that it was Chen-Ming. He covered his nose and silently ran away. Li Daochong's mind was filled with questions about the spirit sequence. He was in a state of selflessness and didn't know what was happening around him. Chen-Ming looked at Li Daochong, who was getting closer and closer to him. He mustered all his strength and walked over, wanting to collide with Li Daochong. Chen-Ming estimated that this collision was enough to send Li Daochong flying 4 to 5 meters away. It wouldn't be a problem for him to break a few bones. Seeing Chen-Ming walk straight to Li Daochong, who was looking at the ground with his head lowered, the students on the road showed sympathetic expressions. Bang! The 2 of them collided. Gotcha! The sound of bones breaking. When they heard the sound, many students frowned. Just the sound alone was enough to make their hair stand on end. Their bodies trembled, and they felt that something was wrong with certain parts of their bodies. All the students who saw this thought that Li Daochong's bones must have been broken. But the strange thing was that after Chen-Ming collided with Li Daochong, Chen-Ming sat on the ground. Li Daochong didn't seem to be affected at all. He looked as if he didn't touch anything and even took 2 more steps forward. For a moment, the surroundings were silent. The students who were passing by stared at this scene with wide eyes. Shock spread across everyone's faces. This collision pulled Li Daochong back to reality from his deep thought. With a strange expression, he looked down and saw a sturdy student sitting on the ground in front of him. Li Daochong finally realized that he had bumped into someone. His face immediately showed an apologetic expression. For the past few days, he had been falling in the weightless room with 5 times the gravity. Chu Qianwei called it training his spatial perception. Li Daochong had always been skeptical about this. How was this training his spatial perception? It was clearly training his resistance. That woman didn't even allow Li Daochong to wear his Dharma robe. Every time he fell, it was like hitting a rock with his flesh. Unknowingly, Li Daochong's resistance had improved by leaps and bounds. Even he didn't realize it. "Student, are you okay?" "I'm sorry, I was thinking about the problem and didn't pay attention to the road. I'm sorry." Li Daochong quickly reached out to help Chen-Ming, who was sitting on the ground. Chen-Ming looked at Li Daochong with a shocked expression. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. He had used all his strength to send Li Daochong flying. Who would have thought that he would feel like he had hit a stone wall? 4 of his ribs were broken and one of them was even stuck in his lung. It was so painful that he wanted to scream. F***ck your lungs. But with so many people watching, if he really screamed, he wouldn't be able to stay in Profound Firmament University in the future. It must be that he didn't hit the right place. His weak ribs hit a hard bone and he hurt himself instead. Chen Ming thought so. Seeing Li Daochong reach out his hand, a cold light flashed in Chen Ming's eyes. See if I don't crush your bones. Chen Ming grabbed Li Daochong's hand and used all his strength to crush it. He gritted his teeth. Chen Ming exerted force and said with a fierce look, "You." Gotcha. The surrounding students once again heard the heart-wrenching sound of bones breaking. Chen Ming wanted to say, "You F***king dared to hit me, are you courting death? Kneel down and kowtow 3 times, call me father, and I won't be calculative with you." But just as he spat out these 2 words, Chen Ming's hand was in intense pain. His hand, which was filled with all his strength, felt like he was holding onto a piece of silver. His 5-finger bones and palm bones were all broken. Pudong. Chen Ming's hand, which was holding onto Li Daochong, was in excruciating pain. His legs went soft and he knelt on the ground. All the students who saw this scene opened their mouths wide and looked at Li Daochong in disbelief. Why would Chen Ming kneel to this fool? Li Daochong was also stunned. He didn't understand and asked, "Student, why are you doing this? Please get up. Is there something you need my help with?" Li Daochong looked at Chen Ming carefully as he spoke. He wanted to search for information about this person in his memory, but there was nothing. He didn't know this person at all. Chen Ming's body trembled. His eyes were filled with fear. He thought that he had hit the wrong place and injured himself. Now, even if he was an idiot, he couldn't find a reason to explain why he had used all his strength to pinch Li Daochong's hand. The hardness of that hand was far beyond Chen Ming's imagination. Fear spread in the depths of Chen Ming's heart. Li Daochong didn't know what was going on. He still held onto Chen Ming's hand and tried to pull him up from the ground. "Awoo!" Chen Ming let out a sharp howl. "Student, what's wrong with you?" Li Daochong saw the other party's painful expression. He thought that Chen Ming had hit his knee while kneeling on the ground, so he increased the strength of his hand. Gotcha! Another soft and crisp sound rang out. Chen Ming's right arm drooped and couldn't be lifted. It was dislocated. "Student, you're sweating a lot. Are you sick?" Li Daochong looked concerned as he took a step forward. Chen Ming jumped back. "Don't come over." Li Daochong stared blankly at the strange student in front of him. "Okay, I won't come over. If you need my help, just let me know. You don't have to kneel." Chen Ming looked at Li Daochong as if he was looking at a wild beast. 3 words kept popping out in his mind. So scary, so scary. How could this guy's body be so hard? Chen Ming didn't have his usual fierce demeanor. "It's nothing. I've been suffering from food poisoning recently. My legs are weak and weak." Chen Ming randomly found an excuse. "Oh, I misunderstood. Goodbye." Li Daochong scratched his head, feeling a little embarrassed. He bid farewell and continued on his way. Chen Ming stared blankly at Li Daochong as he slowly walked away. In the distance, Zhan Honglai kept signaling Chen Ming to beat up Li Daochong with his eyes. The latter pretended not to see. What a joke. This guy's body was even harder than a wild beast. He wasn't human at all. Chen Ming didn't dare to hit him again. Li Daochong took 2 steps forward and saw Zhan Honglai standing in front of him. His eyes immediately turned cold. Zhan Honglai didn't know why Chen Ming didn't hit Li Daochong. He even kneeled in front of everyone. Could it be that Li Daochong bribed him? Zhan Honglai couldn't care less about Chen Ming. He blocked Li Daochong's path and said, "Trash, a week has passed. Did you think I was joking with you? It seems like you're looking for shit in the toilet with a lantern." Li Daochong stopped in his tracks and looked ahead. Next month, Xiao Shima and I will be getting married. Remember to come to the wedding banquet. Zhang Honglia's body trembled. When he heard the word wedding, his eyes spat fire. Chapter 39. Zhang Honglia's harsh words in front of everyone caused the surrounding students to look at Li Daochong with pity. In their eyes, this frail and pitiful fellow had already been sentenced to death. Although many students didn't like Zhang Honglai bullying the weak, he did indeed have the strength to do so. His words weren't empty words. The Zhang family's strength in Tianyuan City was extraordinary. Although there was still a gap between them and the four great clans, they were still considered one of the top clans among the mid-tier clans. The family had a foundation establishment stage cultivator and a few qi gathering stage experts. Not only did they have a strong background, but Zhang Honglai was ranked second in the elite class last semester, second only to the cultivation madman Hongwu. If Zhang Honglai was able to enter the top 3 in this semester's end-of-term exam, he would have a chance to enter the elite class and become the focus of the school's training. His future would be limitless. Li Daochong was now nothing more than a drowning dog. Not only was he abandoned by his family, he didn't have the strength or the talent, and his brain wasn't very good either. Whether it was his background or his personal strength, Li Daochong was completely crushed. What could he use to fight against Zhang Honglai? Everyone firmly believed Zhang Honglia's words. Li Daochong's expression was indifferent as he took 2 steps forward to stand in front of Zhang Honglai. His height advantage allowed him to look down slightly at him. You like Xiao Shima? If you have the guts, then go chase her yourself. What are you yelling at me for? The Federation is all about cultivation. I've already recorded what you just said. I can sue you for intimidation. Li Daochong raised his wristwatch to indicate that he had done so. The surrounding students were all stunned for a moment. They didn't think that Li Daochong wouldn't be afraid of Zhang Honglia's threats, but in their eyes, saying such words would only make his death more miserable. This was a provocation to Zhang Honglai. Zhang Honglia's expression changed. He did not recognize Li Daochong. How could such words come out of the mouth of a fool? Zhang Honglai was vexed in his heart. He had been blinded by anger and actually said such words in public. There were both witnesses and evidence. This kid was right. If he really wanted to sue, it would really work. But even if they really went to the local cultivation court to sue him, given the Zhang family's power, they probably wouldn't even be able to sue him over such a small matter. No matter how bad Li Daochong was, he was still a student of Profound Firmament University. Any student from a cultivation university would receive priority protection from the Federation. Students from a cultivation university under Project 199, like Xian University, had an even higher status. This kid actually knew how to judge the situation and use his identity as a student. This greatly surprised Zhang Honglai. Was the fool enlightened? If that was really the case, Zhang Honglai had no choice but to change his strategy for dealing with Li Daochong. Zhang Honglai really wanted to snatch the watch off Li Daochong's wrist, but there were so many students watching. If he really tried to snatch it and the Zhang family's enemies found out, it would be bad for both himself and the family. There was no hurry to deal with this trash. It was really inconvenient for him to do it himself. As long as he spent some money, he could find someone to take care of him. He could even take his life, but this kind of thing definitely couldn't be brought to the table. A little impatience spoiled great plans. Zhang Honglia's expression changed slightly. He put away his anger and laughed. You said you want to marry Xiao Shima? What shameless boasting. Why haven't I heard that the Qiao family is going to fulfill the marriage contract? The entire Tianyuan city knows what kind of situation you are in now. Are you a toad lusting after a swan's meat? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? You're just a piece of trash without a spirit vein. Forget Xiao Shima, even the old aunties in the slums wouldn't fancy you. Ha! The group of followers behind Zhang Honglai roared with laughter. Li Daochong was too lazy to argue with Zhang Honglai. He only said, "I don't need you to judge what kind of trash I am. No matter how bad I am, I'm still better than a fly." For saying that, Li Daochong walked around Zhang Honglai and left. "Who are you calling a fly?" "Pa." Zhang Honglai reached out and patted Li Daochong's shoulder. "Let go," Li Daochong said calmly. The spirit energy in his body was already rolling. If Zhang Honglai forced him, he would be embarrassed. Even if there was a possibility that he couldn't beat Zhang Honglai now, Li Daochong would make him pay the price. He was ready to use his telekinesis attack at any time. "Zhang Honglai, what are you doing? Bullying other students again?" A cold voice came from the side. Everyone's attention was on Zhang Honglai and Li Daochong, so they didn't pay attention to the situation around them. They only turned their heads when they heard the voice. Blizzard Bing walked over from the other side of the street with a frosty face. Her black robe tightly wrapped around her sexy and voluptuous body, deeply attracting the eyes of every male student who looked at her. However, no matter how attractive Blizzard Bing's body was, the male students only glanced at her and then looked away. No one dared to provoke this level 1 lecturer who was known for being strict and cruel. If they were not careful, they would be blacklisted by Blizzard Eyes. Not only would their credits be deducted, they would also be beaten to the point where they could only cry under their blanket. Zhang Honglai frowned. It was this woman again. Why did she bump into him every time? This was already the third time. Last time, Blizzard Bing also bumped into the Green Wolf Society teaching 2 blind guys a lesson behind the dormitory building. This woman not only called him to the office and scolded him, but also called his father Zhang Zhentian over and scolded him. She said that his father didn't teach his son well. She also said that this was a school and not a gangster society. The school was in a mess because of the gangster-like society. The head of the Zhang family was taught a lesson by Blizzard Bing in front of several lecturers. She didn't give him any face at all. After Zhang Zhentian went back, he flew into a rage and grounded Zhang Honglai for 3 days. If it was an ordinary lecturer, Zhang Honglai wouldn't even take them seriously. He didn't dare to be presumptuous in front of Blizzard Bing. This woman even dared to talk back to the dean when she was really angry. Haha, how could that be? Mr. Qin, we were just discussing the problem of cultivation. Zhang Honglai laughed. Really? Then why did you put your hand on that student's shoulder? Blizzard Bing frowned slightly. She didn't quite believe Zhang Honglia's words. Blizzard Bing hated school violence the most. As an excellent cultivation lecturer, she had the obligation to put an end to this kind of unhealthy practice. Zhang Honglai had good talent. In the elite class, apart from Hongwu, his talent could be said to be the highest. His future was bright, and it was only a matter of time before he became a cultivator. However, Blizzard Bing wouldn't play favoritism just because Zhang Honglai had good grades. A student without good character would only become a scourge even if he had high achievements in the future. Hooligans weren't scary. What was scary was that hooligans could become cultivators. It's just a greeting. Mr. Qin, you don't have to be too nervous. I suddenly remembered that there's one more thing to complete in today's training plan. I'll go first. Zhang Honglia's hand inadvertently moved away from Li Daochong's shoulder. Blizzard Bing wasn't easy to deal with, so it was best to leave. Li Daochong, although you're terrible at cultivation, you're very clever at spiritual base programming. Study hard and you can still make progress on this path in the future. After you've mastered it, you can still work for the Federation to fight against the Hades and protect our homeland. You're different from Zhang Honglai. You have to work hard and don't mix around with him. It won't do you any good. Blizzard Bing's words of encouragement had a different meaning when they came out of her mouth. It felt like she was teaching someone a lesson. He was a little surprised that Blizzard Bing called out Li Daochong's name. He hadn't been going to class recently. The last time he fell asleep in class, He was caught red-handed by Blizzard Bing and answered a question. She actually still remembered him. Li Daochong had been ostracized for a long time and was constantly ridiculed. Now that someone had suddenly encouraged him, even if the tone was harsh, it still warmed his heart. Li Daochong nodded and said, "I understand, Mr. Qin. I'll work hard. I have to go buy some things, so I'll take my leave first." "Okay, go. Although Mr. Chu told me to help you apply for leave, I still hope that you can come to my class as much as possible. I've understood your situation. Pure cultivation isn't suitable for you. You can consider developing in the direction of a spirit sequencer. Even if your spiritual energy is weak, as long as you're willing to work hard, you can still become a very powerful spirit sequencer. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me." Blizzard Bing's serious face revealed a touch of admiration. "Okay, Mr. Qin. I'll work hard. Goodbye." Li Daochong swept away his unhappiness from his encounter with Zhan Honglai and bade farewell to Blizzard Bing. Li Daochong really didn't have the mood to compete with people like Zhan Honglai. Time was really precious to him. Li Daochong didn't want to waste a single minute and second. Half an hour later, Li Daochong arrived at the Spirit Brain second-hand market. He spent 1,000 Federation coins to buy a broken array. He then went home. When he reached home, Li Daochong plunged into the house. A brand new array? It cost at least 30,000 Federation coins. The better ones cost more than 100,000. It was definitely a high-end product. Li Daochong now owed Chu Qianyue a few 100,000 Federation coins. He had to be frugal with the money he had. He could only buy an obsolete product that had been out of production for decades, and it was even broken. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been sold to him at such a cheap price. The boss directly sold it to him as scrap. In fact, this thing couldn't be used at all. The reason Li Daochong dared to buy it was not because he knew how to fix it. He didn't know how to fix this thing. Li Daochong relied on the hot-blooded upgrader because when he came into contact with the array, the hot-blooded upgrader reacted and notified him that this was a broken array. Array in the instrument? Board damaged. Apart from absorbing underworld ghost energy and converting it into spirit chi, the hot-blooded upgrader also had an equipment material exchange function. Li Daochong had never used this function before. The status bar hadn't been activated because he didn't have enough soul point. If he wanted to exchange for it, he had to accumulate 1,000 soul points. Otherwise, this function couldn't be used. At first, Li Daochong didn't know how to obtain soul points. The most direct way to obtain soul points was when Li Daochong killed the stone-horned cow and obtained 10 soul points. At that time, Li Daochong thought that he could only obtain soul points from killing living creatures. The points gained were also very small, so he didn't pay much attention to it. These days, Li Daochong had been concentrating on researching the spirit brain. In the end, when he used spirit chi to decode the spirit sequence, the hot-blooded upgrader actually reacted and notified him of the spirit brain's characteristics and degree of damage. Only then did Li Daochong notice that the black section at the bottom of the interface was activated. It showed that he had 3,325 soul points and could be exchanged. At first, Li Daochong didn't understand why so many soul points had suddenly increased. Later on, he found out that the remnant soul he had destroyed while healing his father was the reason for the sudden increase in soul points. That night, Li Daochong directly obtained 2,500 soul points. He had also accumulated 825 soul points before, because as long as he didn't reach 1,000 soul points, the status bar would be grayed out. Because the hot-blooded upgrader didn't give any hints about this function, Li Daochong had forgotten about it. Last night, Li Daochong had tried using 1,000 soul points to exchange for a piece of the spirit brain's hardware. He actually succeeded. Chapter 40. In Li Daochong's opinion, The hot-blooded upgrade's material exchange function was even more powerful than the upgrade function. In other words, as long as he accumulated enough soul power, he could exchange for any material. However, in addition to the soul power requirement, he had to touch the item. As long as he touched the hot-blooded upgrade device, he could immediately analyze the item. The structure's principle could be determined almost instantly. After activating the 1000 soul power points exchange column, there were still 2000 soul power points exchange, 3000 soul power points exchange, and so on, all the way to 100,000 soul power points exchange. There was a price. The item was blank. Li Daochong used a few days to basically figure out how to exchange. The method was simple. First, he had to have 1000 soul power points, and then he had to touch the item he wanted to exchange for. That's right, he had to touch it. It was equivalent to making a copy. However, it was a little stronger than a copy. As long as the item he touched was 50% intact, the hot-blooded upgrade device could give him a brand new one. Of course, the price of a complete item was extremely high. For example, the low-level spirit brain in Li Daochong's hands wasn't worth much at all. It wasn't a rare item. However, if he wanted to use soul power points to exchange for it, the price would be 10,000 soul power points. It was simply a fraudulent exchange. However, if Li Daochong only exchanged for the item's components, regardless of whether it was a core component or an insignificant component, it would only cost 1,000 soul power points. The spirit brain's core component, the talisman chip, and the rice grain-sized corner, the exchange price was the same. If he made good use of this, it would simply be a bug among bugs. It was precisely because he discovered this feature that Li Daochong dared to buy a scrap array from the second-hand market. Device. When Li Daochong touched it, the hot-blooded upgrade device gave a notification. This array? The device's integrity was 879%, only because the core component spirit processor was broken. After returning home, Li Daochong immediately opened the hot-blooded upgrade device to exchange, and a brand new spirit processor appeared. It was actually optimized. Li Daochong had recently read a lot of related books, and he knew the spirit brain and related devices like the back of his hand. The array spirit processor that he had exchanged for was actually a bit stronger than the Star Explosion level array spirit processor that the Heaven Flying Immortal Company had produced. On the market, the Starburst grade array spirit processor was worth 300,000 Federation coins. Unless you were rich, you couldn't afford it. Of course, if you weren't a professional spirit sequencer, this thing wouldn't be of much use to you. Pleasantly surprised, Li Daochong inserted this piece of array spirit processor into the old array. Within the ritual, there was a general array. The device was connected to the spiritual brain. Everything was ready. Li Daochong held the spiritual base controller in his hand and began to program. His telekinesis connected with the spiritual brain, and he used the spiritual base controller to input spiritual energy and began to program. Spirit base programming was to use psychokinesis to control spirit energy and edit the spirit sequence code through the spirit base controller, allowing the spirit brain to know the programmer's intentions. The strength of one's psyche and the level of one's cultivation would not determine one's success as a spirit sequencer. The key was the accuracy of the spirit sequence code. The higher the accuracy, the more the spirit brain would be able to understand the programmer's intentions. The more precise the spirit sequence that was formed, the higher the grade of the talisman card and spirit card would be. After half a day, Li Daochong created a protective talisman card, the Golden Bell talisman card. Took a bit longer, but it reached the 3rd level. However, this talisman card looked a bit ugly. It was the size of a palm and was yellow in color. There were ancient talisman patterns engraved on it, and it was a bit wrinkled. The card paper was very similar to the talisman paper from the ancient cultivation era. The spirit sequence code that Li Daochong created was very unique. It couldn't be displayed on good talisman cards and could only be used on this kind of obsolete talisman paper? The ritual was recorded. Afterwards, Li Daochong lowered his requirements and spent half an hour to quickly create 7 different types of talisman card. The attack-type talisman cards were fire, ice, and thunder talisman cards. The healing-type talisman cards were clear and miasma removal talisman cards. However, all of these talisman cards were only at the first level. Li Daochong used them to practice. However, these talisman cards were a bit stronger than ordinary first-level talisman cards. However, these talisman cards were all in the same color and looked a bit unfair to the audience. Just by looking at their appearance, they felt like low-quality goods. At night, Li Daochong hurriedly ate a large plate of sea beast meat. Then, he took the third-level Golden Bell talisman card that didn't look good and went to the main city's night market. No matter what a third-level talisman card was used for, it could be sold for at least a few thousand Federation coins. The protective talisman card that Li Daochong created had been simulated and directly withstood the strongest attack of a cultivator at the 9th level of Qi refinement 3 times before it showed signs of weakening. Its strength was self-evident. Li Daochong entered the spiritual network to understand the market. His Golden Bell talisman card was worth at least 30,000 Federation coins. As for the other first-level talisman cards, their market price was around 1,000 to 2,000 Federation coins. Li Daochong set the price at 1,500 Federation coins. When Li Daochong arrived at the night market, it was already rather late. However, the place was still bustling with people coming and going. On both sides of the street were stalls of various sizes selling all kinds of goods. Li Daochong set up a small table that he had prepared beforehand and placed all the talisman cards on it. Beside the table was an eye-catching piece of cloth with 4 eye-catching words written on it. Talisman cards exclusive. Don't miss this opportunity. If you miss today, wait another year. The master's products are definitely the best. The third-level Golden Bell talisman card is only selling for 30,000. You didn't hear wrong. Only 30,000. If you can buy it, you'll make a profit. Li Daochong set up the stall and immediately started shouting. The words he shouted were all kinds of advertising phrases that he remembered from his previous life. The novelty of his shouting attracted quite a few people at first. However, when they saw the wrinkled finished talisman cards on the table, they immediately lost interest and turned around to leave. There was also a small number of people who directly glared at Li Daochong. "Boss, you've gone crazy thinking about money, haven't you? This is a third-level talisman card? Who are you trying to fool?" "Friend, although the quality of my talisman card isn't good, it's easy to use. It's much better than talisman cards of the same grade. If you don't believe me, you can buy it and try it out." "Try it out? Do you think I'm 3 years old? TSK, you're crazy. Hey, don't go. Look at the others. Apart from this one, the rest are all 1,500 each. It's cheap and good." The person had already left. After shouting for over an hour, no one showed any interest. Li Daochong was full of confidence when he came, but now it was all gone. His heart was tired and his throat was hoarse from shouting. None of these people knew what was good for them. Li Daochong complained in his heart, but he had no way to prove it to them. Just like this, time slowly passed. The surrounding stalls were doing well, and no one came to Li Daochong's stall to look at the goods. The cold wind was bleak. After 11 o'clock, many stall owners began to pack up and leave. The people coming and going also gradually became fewer. Li Daochong sat alone in the wind. It was his first time setting up a stall, and he had gotten off to a bad start. It was really not easy to make money. When those stall owners left, they all looked at Li Daochong with ridicule, looking at him as if they were looking at an idiot. Li Daochong did not mind. Those who did not buy his talisman cards were idiots. He was not afraid of making business difficult, but he was afraid that others would not recognize the goods. Li Daochong was not willing to give up. He decided to wait. If no one bought anything at 12 o'clock, he would pack up and go back to sleep. Tomorrow, he still had to endure the torture of that which surnamed Chu. Lack of sleep would cause his condition to deteriorate. At that time, he would not be able to withstand the witch's attacks. Yi Feiyue walked from south to north, from the end of the night market to the end, but she still had not bought a decent talisman card. Her beautiful eyebrows slightly wrinkled. If she could not buy a level 3 talisman card today, she would not be able to get first place in tomorrow's competition in the elite class. Duan Yao's mountain-piercing fist was too fierce. Yi Feiyue could not withstand more than 2 consecutive strikes. Yi Feiyue entered Xiansong University as Tianyuan City's top scholar and directly entered the elite class. As a proud daughter of heaven, Yi Feiyue had her own pride. Even in Xiansong University's elite class, she still wanted to be first. However, Duan Yao's appearance completely shattered Yi Feiyue's pride. Since entering the school, Duan Yao had always been ahead above Yi Feiyue. The latter could only settle for second place. Yi Feiyue was not willing to give up. For more than half a year, she cultivated desperately and studied Duan Yao in all aspects. She was already at the peak of Qi Refining Stage 9 and would definitely reach Qi Refining Stage 10 before the end of term exam. However, Duan Yao was also crazy. His cultivation was always on par with Yi Feiyue's, and he steadily suppressed Yi Feiyue in combat. In every class competition, Yi Feiyue was bound to be unable to withstand Duan Yao's mountain-piercing fists, 3 consecutive strikes. As long as she could withstand it, Yi Feiyue believed that she could definitely defeat Duan Yao. She could not surpass Duan Yao's cultivation in a short period of time, nor could she practice a profound technique. Her only hope was to buy a level 3 or 4 talisman card. The tutor said that both talisman cards and magical weapons could be used. Yi Feiyue's Crimson Moon Sword was a middle-grade human-grade magical weapon, which was on the same level as Duan Yao's Wilderness Gloves. In this regard, it was not inferior, and in terms of attack, it was even a level higher. However, Crimson Moon Sword had no defensive properties, while Duan Yao's Wilderness Gloves had both offense and defense. No matter how sharp her attack was, it would be blocked by the glove. Yi Feiyue felt that her neglect of defense was the fundamental reason why she lost to Duan Yao every time. Yi Feiyue had decided to change to a weapon with both offensive and defensive properties. She had already paid a deposit of 300,000 yuan to the largest refining company, Red Flame Refining Company. She had reserved a middle-grade human-grade flying sword, Condensed Moon, which was custom-made by Yi Feiyue. It had both offensive and defensive properties. However, it was not finished yet, and it would take more than half a month for it to be delivered to her. Today, after class, the tutor suddenly announced that there would be a test tomorrow, and credits would be calculated. Yi Feiyue was irritated at that time. With her current strength, she would still lose to Duan Yao. The problem was her defense. Yi Feiyue was very annoyed at being forced to do something beyond her ability, but there was nothing she could do. After thinking about it, the only way was to buy a 3rd grade or above talisman card, preferably a 4th grade one. After class, Yi Feiyue went to the largest talisman card sales center in Tianyuan City, the Bailing Pavilion. However, there was no stock, and it would only be available tomorrow afternoon. Yi Feiyue wanted to cry but had no tears. The test would be held tomorrow morning, and the stock in the afternoon had nothing to do with her. In desperation, Yi Feiyue could only choose to come to a place like the night market to try her luck. In the end, there was not even a 2nd-grade talisman card for sale. Wasn't it said that there was a hermit master in the night market? Wasn't it said that there was no Jianghu master here? Yi Feiyue was upset. If she had known this would happen, she would have gone to the underground city. If she went there at this time, she would be asking for trouble. How could this be the best time to kill and steal treasures? As a freshman, she would be sending herself to death. Just as Yi Feiyue was about to give up and go back, she heard a series of strange shouts. Chapter 41. Third Grade Golden Bell Rune Card? Yi Feiyue suspected that she had misheard. The Golden Bell Rune Card was one of the more advanced types of protective rune card. In close combat, the Golden Bell Rune Card was the best choice. Compared to the Shield Rune Card, it had no blind spots. Compared to the Wind Wall Rune Card, it was more stable. Compared to the Earth Wall Rune Card, it was more sturdy. Yi Feiyue's eyes lit up and she looked in the direction of the voice. She saw a young man dressed simply and sloppily shouting at the edge of the night market stall. Seeing the stall owner like this, Yi Feiyue was a bit disappointed and felt that he was unreliable. A spirit sequencer who could make third-grade rune cards would have to be a steady person. Spirit sequencers were divided into 9 ranks, from low to high, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 1st grade, special grade, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, and the highest was the 5-star spirit sequencer. Before the 3rd grade, there was still the entry level. Those who could make 3rd grade rune cards were 2nd grade spirit sequencers at the very least. Those who graduated from Profound Firmament University's cultivation major in spirit sequencing and talisman making were 2nd grade spirit sequencers under normal circumstances. Although Yi Feiyue felt that the stall owner was unreliable, she still walked to the front of the stall. She had no other choice and there was nothing to lose by looking. Yi Feiyue, who was already disappointed, frowned when she saw the crumpled rune card on the table. Her first reaction was that this guy was either a swindler or a fool. 3rd grade rune cards were the highest grade among low-grade rune cards. Even 2nd grade spirit sequencers weren't confident in making them. 2nd grade spirit sequencers who could make 3rd grade rune cards had the qualifications to become 1st grade spirit sequencers. 1st grade spirit sequencers were very popular in the various large cultivation companies. They could earn money even if they didn't have to work. Moreover, 3rd grade rune cards were of excellent quality and were in high demand in the market for all kinds of auxiliary 3rd grade rune cards. At 4th grade, the price wasn't something that ordinary people could afford. Yi Feiyue wanted to leave, but there were no other stalls behind her and the night market was about to end. She thought that she might as well ask for the price. If it was cheap, she could buy it as long as it could be used. It was better than nothing. Boss, how much is a Golden Bell Rune card? Yi Feiyue asked. 30,000. Li Daochong directly quoted the price. He didn't have much hope for this beautiful customer who came to ask for the price. Yi Feiyue's frown deepened. 30,000 for a 3rd grade charm card wasn't considered expensive. In fact, it was quite fair. However, no matter how Yi Feiyue looked at the talisman-like things on the small table, they looked like inferior goods and were more likely to be fake goods. Looking at it this way, the price of 30,000 yuan was obviously a scam. Are you sure you're selling a 3rd grade Golden Bell Rune card? Yi Feiyue finally couldn't help but ask. It's the real deal. If it's fake, I'll compensate you tenfold. Li Daochong didn't want to explain too much when he was questioned again. He had spent a lot of effort to create this level 3 rune card, and its power was half of that of other cards of the same level. It might still be comparable to a level 4 card, but it was definitely a strengthened level 3 card. You made it? Yi Feiyue asked again. Li Daochong originally wanted to say yes, but after thinking about it, he felt that it was better to dress it up. He really didn't look like a 2nd grade spirit sequencer who could create a 3rd grade rune card. If he said that he made it himself, Li Daochong definitely wouldn't be able to produce a 2nd grade spirit sequencer certification if they wanted to see it. Not completely. I completed it under my master's guidance. Li Daochong found a simple excuse. In this day and age, people only recognized the person and not the object when making something. As long as it was made by a master, it would definitely be a good thing. No matter how good the nameless person's work was, it wouldn't be good either. Although Li Daochong didn't want to beg others to buy it, It was his first time doing business after all. He wanted to make a name for himself first. This beautiful customer in front of him, no matter what she wore or how she dressed, was obviously a rich customer. If she bought it and used it well, it would be an invisible advertisement. "Is it convenient for you to tell me who your master is?" Yifei continued to ask. She knew a few of the slightly famous spirit sequencers. "It's not convenient." Li Daochong was getting a little impatient with her repeated questions. If she didn't want to buy it, then so be it. If she didn't want to buy it, then so be it. Good things should be sold to people who recognize them. If they didn't, then this brother wouldn't sell it. Yifei picked up the Golden Bell rune card and wanted to see what it was. However, she didn't know anything about it and couldn't understand it no matter how she looked at it. Li Daochong was in a bad mood. After asking for so long, she didn't buy it. She also didn't ask for his permission before picking it up and flipping it around to look at it. Damn it, could it be that he met a scammer who was trying to cheat him? Li Daochong's heart skipped a beat as he stared at the beautiful woman's hands. He was afraid that if he wasn't careful, he would fall into this beautiful woman's trap and replace the real thing. Li Daochong was really worried and asked, "Do you want it or not? If not, then please put it down. I'm going to close the stall." Although Yifei didn't know much about rune cards, she had used a lot of them. The quality of the rune card in her hand was just passable. The patterns on it were basically the same as the level 3 rune cards she used before, but there were some differences in the details. There was also a very clear spirit energy fluctuation on it, so it shouldn't be a fake. At most, it was an inferior product. She was going to try everything she could. It was better than nothing. 30,000 yuan was nothing to Yifei's financial strength. She said, "Boss, I want this rune card. Can I transfer the money?" Li Daochong was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect the beautiful woman to really want it. He immediately said, "Sure." Yifei raised her wristwatch and Li Daochong did the same. He scanned the spiritual pattern code and the transfer was successful. Li Daochong's account immediately had 30,000 yuan added to it. In fact, Yifei had cash and spirit stones on her. She was prepared to sell the protective rune card. Her original plan was to sell a level 4 rune card. Yifei didn't use cash or spirit stones. She used the transfer because she was extra careful. After the transfer, the account ID on the spiritual net would be recorded. If the Golden Bell rune card she bought was a fake, Yifei didn't plan to let it go. 30,000 yuan was nothing to her, but she definitely couldn't swallow the anger of being cheated. When the time came, she would be able to find this brat using his spiritual net account. Yifei didn't mind teaching this kind of peddler a lesson. She wanted to let him know that not everyone could be cheated. Li Daochong naturally didn't know what Yifei was thinking. After earning 30,000 yuan, he felt at ease. He needed money to treat his father's injuries, eat at home and renovate the house. Li Daochong also needed money for his own cultivation. In addition to these fixed expenses, Li Daochong still owed that witch, Chu Qianyue, a few 100,000 yuan in debt. Now that he had found a way to make money, Li Daochong felt a lot more at ease. This kind of skill was needed everywhere to make money. After receiving the money, Li Daochong packed up his stall and left. On the way home, he bought 50 kilograms of spirit beast meat and a bottle of top-grade spirit wine, flame fruit liquor, from a barbecue shop. Now that he had made money, he had to reward himself with some good food. The spirit wine was good for his father's injuries. After returning home, the father, son, and Yinping had a good meal. The three of them were very busy these days. Li Tianyang was fully focused on healing his injuries, except for eating and sleeping. Yinping didn't have a moment to rest. Hiring people outside cost money, so Yinping did everything she could herself. Every penny saved was a penny. Li Daochong was at school during the day, and came back at night to study the spiritual brain and practice the psychokinesis battle technique. After dinner, the three of them were busy with their own things. On the third day, as soon as Li Daochong entered the zero-gravity room, Chu Qianyue activated the fifth gear of gravity, increasing the gravity by 3 times. The two of them fought. Chu Qianyue controlled her cultivation at the 5th level of refining qi, but it was actually a bit difficult for her. This surprised her quite a bit, but she quickly adapted to the foundation. Li Daochong was out of luck. Chu Qianyue was simply a mad woman when it came to special training. She didn't know what fatigue was. Dong, from time to time, the sound of impact, screams, and muffled groans could be heard from the 5th zero-gravity room. Xian University's first-year super-class combat room. 15 genius students would fight each other by drawing lots, and each of them would fight 5 rounds. Now that all the rounds had ended, there was only one final round left. Yi Feiyue versus Duan Yao. The two of them currently had the same number of points, and they had an overwhelming advantage in all the 4 matches. The two of them were even more talented than the others. On the stage, Yi Feiyue's mood was complicated. Every time she faced Duan Yao, she would feel an inexplicable panic. Her cultivation was clearly on par with him, but she just felt that she couldn't beat him. This kind of naturally formed pressure made her feel extremely uncomfortable. Duan Yao stood motionless and calmly looked at Yi Feiyue. The two of them had fought 5 times since the beginning of the semester. Duan Yao had 4 wins and 1 draw, so he had an absolute advantage. He was very clear about Yi Feiyue's trump card. As long as he could resist her ultimate move, Red Lotus blooming, he could easily defeat her. Begin. Following the order of the homeroom teacher, Lu Jingyuan, the duel officially began. On the stage, Duan Yao and Yi Feiyue moved at the same time. A fist and a sword collided with a loud bang. There was a time limit for the duel. One of them must win within 3 minutes. There was no such thing as a draw. If there was no winner after 3 minutes, both sides would be judged as losers. The homeroom teacher made such a rule so that everyone would fight with all their strength without holding back. Clang! Clang! The sound of metal colliding on the stage was like a shockwave that spread everywhere. The frequency was frighteningly high. The other 13 superclass students below the stage were all shocked. In just a little more than a month, Yi Feiyue and Duan Yao's strength had made great progress. How in the world did these two freaks cultivate? Lu Ming cried out in alarm. Duan Yao's mountain-piercing fist has already reached the 5th layer. There's even a qi explosion when he punches. Yi Feiyue is also not bad. Her red lotus sword technique is even faster. Her sword is like a lotus fire. She's at the 9th layer of qi refining and can actually gather qi. Those who could enter the superclass were all geniuses. At this moment, the 2 people fighting on the stage were no longer geniuses, but freaks. 2.5 minutes passed. The 2 people on the stage only had afterimages. Their speed was extremely fast, and their oppressive aura spread to the audience below the stage. The 13 spectators were breathless. Some of them were wondering what the result would be if they fought against one of these 2. Lu Ming, you're lucky today. You didn't fight against Duan Yao. If you fought against him, how long could you last? Situlan looked at the 2 freaks on the stage and asked Lu Ming. Lu Ming was ranked 3rd in the superclass. Less than 10 moves. Lu Ming spoke the truth. Look at you. The thunder profound heaven spirit vein growing on your body is really a waste. Situlan rolled her eyes. Lu Ming didn't get angry. He shrugged his shoulders and said, I'm a human, not a freak. As he spoke, the oppressive aura on the stage suddenly increased. Duan Yao blocked Yi Feiyue's red lotus blossom again. Yi Feiyue is in danger. Yi Feiyue is still lacking. Duan Yao is too strong. On the stage, Duan Yao avoided the last sword. He revealed a slight smile and a qi vortex flashed on his right fist, piercing mountain-breaking stone. Almost at the same time, Yi Feiyue took out a crumpled yellow talisman paper. Chapter 42. Yi Feiyue will be blown away. Someone exclaimed. Bang, bang, bang. 3 muffled bangs were heard. The scene that everyone expected didn't happen. Yi Feiyue was still standing there, and no one knew when an extremely pale golden light shield had formed around her body. Duan Yao's 3 consecutive strikes were all blocked by the light shield. The whole room was silent. The geniuses of the superclass were shocked with their mouths wide open. Yi Feiyue used an ordinary amulet card, but it was impossible for an ordinary amulet card to block Duan Yao's strike. A 4th-grade amulet card. Everyone immediately reacted. Yi Feiyue really spent a lot of money. She actually bought a 4th-grade amulet card. It cost at least a few $100,000, but it's gone after 1 use. Someone suddenly realized. What a waste. A few $100,000 can buy a good low-grade human-grade magic weapon. Yi Feiyue really went all out for a few points. The class instructor, Lu Jingyuan, looked surprised. She didn't expect Yi Feiyue to use such a powerful amulet card. That thin light shield had an unimaginable defensive power. Lu Jingyuan felt that even if she hit it with all her strength, she would only be able to scatter the light shield and would not be able to form an aftershock attack. This amulet card was definitely made by a master. On the stage, Duan Yao was even more shocked than the others. He had used his wilderness gloves to unleash 3 consecutive strikes, but he hadn't even been able to break through a single layer of protective light. Yi Feiyue was so shocked that she even forgot to launch a counterattack. She didn't expect that the low-grade amulet she bought for 30,000 would have such a strong defensive power. She thought it would be good enough to block one of Duan Yao's punches, but it actually blocked all 3 without being scattered. Who was that peddler's master? The 3rd-grade amulet card's effect actually reached the 4th-grade level of protection. Yi Feiyue was momentarily dazed. Then, she backhanded her sword. Duan Yao raised his hand to block, but the 3-hit combo consumed too much energy and his body was empty. He was directly hit and staggered. Yi Feiyue seized the opportunity and struck 7 times. Finally, Duan Yao couldn't dodge and had a sword on his neck. Yi Feiyue wins. The class instructor, Lu Jingyuan, immediately announced. The unexpected result caused a burst of exclamations from the audience. However, most of them felt that it was a bit wasteful for Yi Feiyue to spend a huge sum of money in exchange for points in a small test. The price of a 4th-grade rune card was exorbitant, and the one Yi Feiyue was using was a relatively good one, so the price would probably be even more expensive, at least a few $100,000. Yi Feiyue herself couldn't believe that she had actually won. Yi Feiyue wasn't in the mood for the rest of the class. Her mind was filled with that golden bell rune card. That peddler hadn't lied to her. It really was a level 3 rune card. No, it was an enhanced level 3 rune card. The peddler's master was definitely a special grade spirit sequencer or above. Such a person would definitely be a popular figure in the universe, let alone the Shenghua Federation. Yi Feiyue's intestines were green with regret after being able to buy such a powerful talisman card for only 30,000 yuan. She shouldn't have bought more at that time and directly bought 10 of them. This sentence kept echoing in Yi Feiyue's mind. Yi Feiyue immediately turned on her wristwatch. However, the ID from yesterday's transfer record showed that it was an invalid account. There was no information at all. Yi Feiyue stared at her wristwatch with her mouth wide open. Who could block their account on the spiritual nexus without leaving any trace? A spirit sequencer. Only a spirit sequencer could do that. A star-grade spirit sequencer? Yi Feiyue's delicate body trembled. Chu Qianhua looked at Li Daochong, who was lying on the ground not far away and struggling to stand up again and again. A trace of emotion appeared in her pair of pitch-black eyes. She seemed to have seen her past self. This guy was completely different from the description in the file. Not only was he not a fool, but he was also quite cunning. Chu Qianhua suspected that Li Daochong was a fox in his previous life. Although Chu Qianwei suppressed her cultivation to level 5 of Qi refining, compared to a real level 5 Qi refining practitioner, Chu Qianwei was much stronger. Her plan was to first fight Li Daochong in the space of disorder while at level 5 of Qi refining. This kind of training was the best way to improve one's spatial perception. Chu Qianyue's goal was to have a very accurate spatial perception at level 5 of Qi refining. Then she would continue to lower her cultivation until she reached level 1 of Qi refining. When she reached level 1 of Qi refining, she would still be able to fight Li Daochong to a draw and her spatial perception would reach another level. But today, not only was Chu Qianyue unable to lower her cultivation to fight Li Daochong, she even raised her cultivation to level 6 of Qi refining. Otherwise, Chu Qianyue would have been miserably beaten up by this guy today. This guy's comprehension of spatial perception was simply inconceivable, and his cultivation was also much stronger than the last time she tested him. But Chu Qianyue didn't think much of this. She had seen too many geniuses, including herself, but Chu Qianyue had never seen someone as tenacious as Li Daochong. Even Battle Sword Augustine was inferior to him. This guy was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. No matter how she beat him up, he would always be able to stand up again in the end. Even if his bones were broken in more than a dozen places, as long as his vitals weren't injured, he would be able to stand up again. Come on, let's fight, let's continue. Li Daochong clamored, but his body was swaying. That's all for today. Go to the healing room. Chu Qianyue looked at the time and said, she had other training to do in a while. You said it. Today it's still 20,000. Now I still owe you 460,000. With that, Li Daochong turned around and went to the healing room. As soon as he entered the healing room, Li Daochong climbed into the spiritual liquid and breathed a sigh of relief. The pores on his body opened up and crazily absorbed the nutrients in the spiritual liquid to repair his body. Just as Li Daochong was lying comfortably in the spiritual liquid tank and sleeping soundly, the Qiao family announced to the public that on the 16th of next month, Qiao Shima and Li Daochong would get married at the Spirit Lake Villa at the foot of Tianyuan Mountain. As soon as this news came out, the people of Tianyuan City were in an uproar. It also caused quite a stir among the cultivation families. The Qiao family's decision was far beyond people's expectations. In fact, the marriage of Qiao Shima and Li Daochong itself didn't attract much attention. The Qiao family was just a small family. Qiao Shima was called the number 1 beauty, but in fact it was thanks to Li Tianyang. If he hadn't taken a fancy to Qiao Shima and appointed her as his daughter-in-law, the title of the number 1 beauty in Tianyuan City might not have fallen on Qiao Shima's head. At that time, Li Tianyang was still the number 1 expert in Blue Bay Star, the head of the Li family, one of the 4 major families, and the commander of the 3rd Regiment of the 3rd Army in the Northern Frontier Star region. He was equivalent to a feudal lord. If he stamped his feet, the Blue Bay Star would shake 3 times. A casual sentence from him could be regarded as a holy scripture. Could the woman that Li Tianyang took a fancy to be wrong? There was no mistake. Because of this, Qiao Shima was called the number 1 beauty. After all, she was the daughter-in-law of the number 1 expert. Of course, Qiao Shima didn't disappoint the number 1 expert. Indeed, the older she grew, the more beautiful she became. Li Daochong's reputation for being a fool spread far and wide. He had always been a laughingstock. If it wasn't for Li Tianyang, who would he be? No one knew and no one cared. Therefore, this marriage was only noticed because of Li Tianyang. Later, Li Tianyang's incident happened. The Li family forced the Qiao family to return the betrothal gifts, which made the whole marriage complicated and confusing. The people liked to see the miscellaneous things behind the backs of the rich and powerful families, and the attention kept on rising. However, after Li Tianyang fell from grace, almost everyone thought that the Qiao family would never marry Qiao Shima to that fool, Li Daochong. Unfortunately, everyone was wrong. The Qiao family married their precious daughter to Li Daochong. As the saying goes, fortune favors fools. It was naturally good that the people had so many things to talk about after dinner. However, Qiao Shima's pursuers, admirers, and those who wanted to possess her beat their chests and sighed. It was like a bolt of lightning on a sunny day. Someone once publicly announced on the spiritual nexus that Qiao Shima would never marry Li Daochong. If they got married, he would live stream himself eating sh*t. That person's post was completely deleted. From then on, the person in question changed his appearance and disappeared without a trace. In the Zhan family's villa, Zhan Honglai was engulfed in anger. He had been grounded for 7 days. During these 7 days, Zhan Honglai had undergone hellish training under Zhan Jintian's personal supervision. After the conflict with Li Daochong at the school gate last time was witnessed by Blizzard Bing, that woman came to visit his home as expected. Zhan Honglai was reprimanded once again, and Zhan Honglai was slapped 3 times on the spot. Zhan Honglai wasn't afraid of anything but his father. This time, his confinement would continue until the end of the term test. Zhan Jintian said that if he couldn't get a good ranking in the end of the term test, he would break Zhan Honglia's legs, and then break them again. Zhan Honglai was afraid. Even if he was so angry that his eyes were bloodshot, he didn't dare to disobey his father's orders. Moreover, his father's people were guarding outside the villa, so he couldn't get out. Zhan Honglai sent a message to Zhan Shaoqing, the one with the greatest potential among the younger generation of the Zhan family's side branch. He was 20 years old and was at the peak of the 5th level of qi refinement. Zhan Shaoqing wanted to become a core member of the Zhan family, so he listened to Zhan Honglia's every word. "Brother Lai, who made you angry? I'll tear him apart," Zhan Shaoqing said, as if he was swearing an oath. He tried his best to show off in front of Zhan Honglai. Zhan Honglai was talented, and it was only a matter of time before he succeeded Zhan Jintian. If he was loyal now, once he took over, Zhan Shaoqing would also become a core member of the Zhan family. Zhan Honglia's face darkened as he whispered in Zhan Shaoqing's ear. "As long as you help me with this, the position of the Zhan family's general manager will be yours in the future." Zhan Shaoqing was overjoyed. "Thank you, Brother Lai. Don't worry, this is easy. Just wait for my good news." Zhan Honglai nodded. "Just do it. I've already told Su Liang and Lu Hao to listen to your orders. Li Qingyao wants to use Lu Hao's father's connections in the bank to find evidence of the Li family's prodigal son, Li Tianyang, misappropriating the Li family's funds. Just find an excuse and she'll take the bait and use her to lure Li Tianyang out. That bitch Yin Ping is alone at home, so I don't need to teach her what to do next." Chapter 43. After leaving the training hall, Li Daochong stretched his body. The effects of the enhanced healing liquid provided by Chu Qianyue were extraordinary. Every time he soaked in it, not only did it heal Li Daochong's injuries, but it also strengthened his body after each tempering session. The strengthening effect might not be obvious, but after accumulating for more than 10 days, his body's strength had increased significantly. Li Daochong's originally thin and weak body was now much stronger. Although he still looked thin, he was no longer as skinny as before. His muscles were as sharp as a knife, and his face was white and clean, with a trace of foolishness. After leaving the school, Li Daochong was about to speed up and run home when he heard someone calling him from behind. "Li Daochong." He turned around and saw that it was Ouyang Qian. After the trip to the underground city, Li Daochong had not seen her again. Seeing her rushing over, he felt a bit strange. "What's the matter? I just saw your sister being forcefully dragged into a floating car towards the South Lake." Ouyang Qian's expression was a bit flustered. The corner of Li Daochong's eye twitched. When Li Tianyang returned, he felt strange that Li Qingyao did not appear. Later, Li Qingyao secretly contacted Li Tianyang and told him that she was about to obtain evidence of Li Tianyang embezzling the family's funds, so it was temporarily inconvenient for her to appear. Li Tianyang returned with serious injuries. At that time, he thought that he did not have much time left. Even if the family abandoned him, there was nothing he could do. He only wanted to live out the rest of his life peacefully. However, the heavens helped the worthy. Li Tianyang's serious injuries were healed by his son. The spirit placenta gradually recovered, and Jean Dan also showed signs of recovery. Li Tianyang was reborn, so naturally, he could not let the matter of the family abandoning him go so easily. The Li family's achievements today were mainly due to Li Tianyang. After his accident, not only did the family not help him, they even kicked him out with serious injuries. How could Li Tianyang swallow this resentment? He was also very supportive of Li Qingyao collecting evidence of Li Jinghua's crimes. Li Daochong naturally supported his father's plan, so he didn't go to Li Qingyao. Now that he heard that Li Qingyao had been kidnapped, Li Daochong knew that something was wrong. It was very likely that this girl had exposed herself. Previously in the underground city, Li Daochong felt that Li Qingyao did not do things carefully. Li Daochong glanced in the direction of the southern lake. Without saying a word, the spiritual aura in his entire body exploded, and he was about to madly dash over. Li Daochong, take my car. I've placed a tracking talisman on the vehicle, Ouyang Qian said as she walked to the side of the street where her vehicle was parked. Li Daochong didn't hesitate to jump in. No matter how fast he ran, he couldn't possibly outrun the floating vehicle. The South Lake was so big that it was impossible for him to find the exact location. Ouyang Qian followed him into the car, started the engine, and flew away. You know Li Qingyao? Li Daochong didn't know much about Ouyang Qian. Previously, she had brought him into a haunted house for a few spirit stones. If he hadn't had the hot-blooded upgrader at the time, he would have been sucked dry by the 3 short ghosts. Li Daochong learned from his past mistake. He didn't trust Ouyang Qian's character very much. I'm not very familiar with Li Qingyao, but we did an activity together last semester. Today, she asked me to meet her at Floating Cloud Street on the west side of the campus and asked me to deliver something to a place in the west side of the city. She said that it was inconvenient for her to go because someone was following her, so I came over at the appointed time. However, before I could get out of the hovercraft, I saw another hovercraft stop beside her. 2 people got out and roughly dragged her into the vehicle. Li Qingyao resisted and was slapped in the face. Ouyang Qian could tell that Li Daochong was a little worried about her, so she immediately explained what had happened. Li Daochong knew that Ouyang Qian ran errands for people on the spiritual net. Later on, he did a simple investigation on Ouyang Qian. Li Daochong's face was expressionless as he asked, "Since you were on Floating Cloud Street, how did you know that I would leave the school at this time?" Ouyang Qian was a bit unhappy with Li Daochong's excessive cautiousness, so she frowned and said, "Li Daochong, I don't think I need to explain too much to you. If you don't believe me, you can get out of the car right now. I was chasing after that car to South Lake. If you want to go to South Lake from Floating Cloud Street, you have to pass through the school gate. I didn't dare to chase after it alone, so I was about to call a few of my classmates to go with me." Li Daochong didn't say anything more. Last time in the underground city's ghost castle, although Ouyang Qian was an accomplice, she actually didn't know anything about it. She was only used by someone and almost became a burial object. After a while, Li Daochong saw that Ouyang Qian was about to cry from anger. He said, "Last time I was almost killed by you. So I asked a few more questions, so as to avoid falling into a pit again." Ouyang Qian said in a huff, "Last time I was wrong. I was just leading the way. I didn't know that someone wanted to harm you. Didn't I almost lose my life?" Li Daochong turned his face to look at Ouyang Qian. "You know? Didn't you say that I drugged you and did something to your car?" Ouyang Qian's mood eased a little. At that time, I had just woken up and didn't know anything. I took it out of context, but that kind of scene would make anyone misunderstand. You don't have to keep it in mind. Li Daochong said indifferently, I don't like to be wronged. Then how did you know that I didn't harm you? Ouyang Qian hesitated for a moment before replying, I have an Echo Talisman card on me. I know everything after seeing the echo. Li Daochong's eyes narrowed slightly. He repeated with a deeper meaning, You know everything? Ouyang Qian knew that Li Daochong was referring to the matter of him hiding his strength. She pursed her lips and pretended not to understand. She continued, My tracking talisman was bought with money. When I find your sister, you have to pay me for the talisman. Li Daochong smiled. With a flash of telekinesis, he took out 2 spirit stones from the small Na-Yu bag hanging on his waist and said, one for the tracking talisman and the other for the taxi. Please hurry up. If you can't find my sister as soon as possible, I won't give you a single cent. Seeing the spirit stones, Ouyang Qian's beautiful eyes sparkled. The haze on her face disappeared. Then sit tight. I'm going to speed up. Whoosh. Ouyang Qian stepped on the talisman array pedal as hard as she could. The floating car suddenly accelerated and shot out like an arrow. There were countless floating cars in the sky above Tianyuan City. There were also cultivators flying on sword. The road was extremely complicated. Ouyang Qian wasn't affected at all. She drove the floating car up, down, left, and right. In less than 20 minutes, they entered the South Lake area. This was the southernmost part of Tianyuan City. The South Lake was the largest freshwater lake on Blue Bay Star. It was surrounded by banks and shrubbery. There were also some hills that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. The geography here was quite complicated and the area was huge. Looking for a floating car here was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Fortunately, Ouyang Qian had the Echo Talisman. She followed the spiritual waves of the Echo Talisman and quickly found the floating car. The other party had just arrived and was slowly descending into a forest in the distance. Ouyang Qian didn't approach before landing. Wait here. Don't follow me. Li Daochong's voice was still echoing when he disappeared. Ouyang Qian sat in the driver's seat with a shocked expression. Her mouth was wide open, but she couldn't say a word. She didn't see how Li Daochong left. What was this brat's cultivation? Li Daochong had to endure 5 times the normal gravity in the chaotic gravity environment. He had to fight against Chu Qianyue, the witch. Plus, he was in the 8th layer of the Qi refining realm. His speed was not something that Ouyang Qian could see clearly. Chapter 44. Lu Hao, why did you bring me here? After Li Qingyao was dragged out of the car, she glared at a tall and handsome young man and questioned him. What do you think? Lu Hao sneered. How would I know? Li Qingyao gritted her teeth. Other than Lu Hao, another person got out of the car. It was Zhan Shaoqing, and there were 2 other strong men who looked like thugs. Li Qingyao knew something was wrong when she was dragged into the car, but she didn't have much strength to resist. If she resisted fiercely, who knew what would happen? Along the way, Li Qingyao just kept a cold face. In order to avoid angering these 2 people, she chose to wait and see. Seeing Zhan Shaoqing, Li Qingyao knew something was wrong. Ever since she was tricked in the underground city, she lost contact with Zhan Honglai and the others. That time, she contacted the 3 fake Nightwalkers through Zhan Honglai. No matter how stupid Li Qingyao was, she knew that she was tricked by Zhan Honglai. Now that Zhan Shaoqing suddenly appeared and brought her to this place where even birds don't shit, she knew that he didn't have good intentions. However, Li Qingyao didn't believe that these 2 guys would dare to do anything to her. With a cold face she said, You better let me go quickly, or else my father won't let you go. Ha! Zhan Shaoqing laughed and said, Your father? Are you talking about the person whose placenta ruptured and Jean Dan was damaged and is about to die? I'm so scared. Lu Hao also looked fearless. His eyes turned slightly and said, Li Qingyao, since your father is so powerful, why don't you call him over too? Li Qingyao bit her lower lip and didn't move. Li Tianyang was seriously injured. How could he save her? Lu Hao, why are you with the Zhan family? Aren't you afraid that your master, Hong Junhui, will break your legs if he finds out? Li Qingyao provoked. Hong Junhui is just a guy from a branch of the Hong family. Do you think he's Hongwu? Lu Hao has always been my man. Li Qingyao, don't you want Li Jinghua's anonymous transfer records? I can give it to you, but I have a condition. Zhan Shaoqing smiled. What condition? Li Qingyao was a little surprised. She didn't expect Zhan Shaoqing to suddenly change the topic and want to make a deal with her. Don't worry, I'll show you the goods first, Zhan Shaoqing said as he gave Lu Hao a look. Lu Hao immediately took out a spirit card and inserted it into his wristwatch, projecting a spirit image. It clearly recorded the transfer records of Li Jinghua using his position to embezzle family funds in the past 3 years. The entire account was a backstage record transmitted from Li Jinghua's private account. As long as this thing was taken out, Li Jinghua would be finished. After Li Qingyao saw it clearly, Lu Hao put away the spirit card and said, Li Qingyao, don't say that I took your fire elemental bead for free. I got what you wanted, but one fire elemental bead isn't enough. As long as you do one more thing, this account spirit card will be yours. You can deal with Li Jinghua however you want. That's your Li family's internal affairs, we can't interfere. What do you think? Li Qingyao pursed her lips. She really wanted that spirit card. As long as she got it, the Li family's great elder Li Boyo and grandson Li Jinghua would definitely be kicked out of the family tree. Without the great elder's obstruction, her father might be treated fairly by the family. Tell me, what do you want me to do? Li Qingyao asked. It's very simple. Send 1,000 miles sound transmission to Li Tianyang. Just say that you're in danger and are at South Lake. Ask him to come and save you. Lu Hao raised his eyebrows. When Li Qingyao heard this, she immediately became alert. She looked at Lu Hao and Zhan Shaoqing with a trace of fear in her eyes. Lu Hao's words were too strange. Li Qingyao suddenly realized that these two people's target was most likely not her, but Li Tianyang. Could it be that Li Boyo wanted to secretly kill her father? Li Qingyao felt a chill run down her spine. Seeing that Li Qingyao didn't move, Zhan Shaoqing said impatiently, Lu Hao, why are you wasting so much effort? Su Liang is still waiting to make a move. Just feed her the immortal herb. Are you afraid that she won't listen to you? The two of you, hold her down. The two big men behind Zhan Shaoqing immediately moved. The two of them looked at Li Qingyao as if they were looking at a little chick. Li Qingyao's heart sank into despair and helplessness. She turned around and ran, but she was caught after just 2 steps. The two big men were actually 4th-level Qi practitioners. They were even more powerful than the 3 people she met in the underground city. Feed her. Zhan Shaoqing's eyes were fierce as he ordered. The two big men took out a bottle of blue liquid at the same time. There were several vine-like plants soaked in the bottle. There were bright flowers growing on the vines. It was a very high-quality, immortal herb. If a drug addict saw it, they would definitely go crazy. This bottle of immortal herb liquid was worth more than 100,000 Federation coins. Li Qingyao struggled desperately in despair, but how could she break free with her little strength? Once she touched the immortal herb, she would never be able to stop. This thing would fuse with her body, making her unable to stop. From then on, she would only want to suck the immortal herb, and become a walking corpse that didn't care about anything else. Zhan Shaoqing, you will die a horrible death. Li Qingyao screamed hysterically in despair. What are you two waiting for? Feed her. Zhan Shaoqing said fiercely. Whoever wants to die, feed her. A cold voice came from the bushes nearby. A figure flashed over. Zhan Shaoqing and Lu Hao didn't know that someone was lying in ambush nearby. They didn't even see how the figure appeared. In short, when they came back to their senses, a young man with a tender face had already appeared in front of them. Zhang Xiaoqing and Lu Hao didn't recognize Li Daochong immediately. They had only heard rumors about Li Daochong. Lu Hao had never seen him in person, and Zhang Xiaoqing had only seen him a few times. Li Qingyao was stunned. Her small mouth that was tightly shut couldn't help but open slightly. She looked at Li Daochong in disbelief. Although Li Daochong's face didn't change much, Li Qingyao couldn't recognize him at this moment. Her cold gaze had never appeared on him before. "Brother!" Li Qingyao's face froze. She subconsciously called out, "Qingyao, long time no see." Li Daochong nodded. "You're Li Daochong?" Zhang Xiaoqing finally reacted. His nervous expression relaxed. "I was wondering who it was." "So it's you, you fool. Li Tianyang is also here?" While speaking, Zhang Xiaoqing looked around. He shot out a detection talisman in his hand. It instantly covered a range of hundreds of meters. Soon, he got a response. Within a radius of 800 meters, there was no one else except them. After detecting that there was no one else, Zhang Xiaoqing felt his heart ache. This detection talisman was a third-level talisman. One talisman cost 180,000 yuan. With a casual toss, 180,000 yuan was gone. The detection result was nothing. If he knew that there was no one, he wouldn't have used it. At the same time, Lu Hao also used other methods to detect the surroundings. The result was the same. There was no one. When Zhang Xiaoqing and Lu Hao confirmed that Li Daochong was alone, their faces completely relaxed. The two were afraid of Li Tianyang. No matter how heavily injured a Jin Dan cultivator was, he was definitely not someone that a qi refining cultivator like them could contend against. One look from him could destroy them. As for Li Daochong, in their eyes, he couldn't even withstand a single blow. Naturally, there was no need to be nervous. Chapter 45. Brother, let's go. Don't worry about me. Li Qingyao suddenly shouted. Go? Do you think you can leave? Zhang Xiaoqing teased. He looked at Lu Hao and said, Lu Hao, you catch Li Qingyao. You two tie up that idiot. Later, we will have a big brother and sister show. Record it and upload it to the Spirit Net. I believe it will be very interesting. Li Daochong, how do you think the Qiao family will react when they see it? Li Daochong's cold expression turned vicious after Zhang Xiaoqing said such shameless words that had no bottom line. After Zhang Xiaoqing finished speaking, Lu Hao immediately went to catch Li Qingyao so that the two men could free up their hands. However, the two men who caught Li Qingyao did not move at all. Lu Hao strangely pushed one of the men. Pudong. The burly man fell straight to the ground. What's going on? Zhang Xiaoqing frowned. Lu Hao leaned over and saw that the man was foaming at the mouth. His pupils were dilated and his expression was stiff. He had fainted. Brother Cheng, he seems to be addicted to drugs. Lu Hao guessed when he saw the man's chest rise and fall. Damn it, he actually got addicted at this time. See how I will deal with him when we get back. Zhang Xiaoqing cursed angrily. Pudong. Just as he was speaking, another big man also fell down stiffly. When Li Daochong appeared, he had already used his telekinesis attack on the two men and directly knocked them out. With the two men down, Lu Hao was afraid that Li Qingyao would run away. He did not care about what happened to the two men and reached out to catch Li Qingyao. But Lu Hao just reached out when his wrist was grabbed by a large hand. He turned around and saw that Li Daochong had appeared in front of him. Lu Hao was shocked. His other hand clenched into a fist and punched towards Li Daochong's face. However, his fist was only halfway out. Ah! Lu Hao let out a tragic cry. His face twisted together as he knelt on the ground. Gotcha! The sound of bones breaking. Lu Hao's wrist, which was being held by Li Daochong, was in a strange shape. It was already broken. Everything happened too quickly and too suddenly. Li Qingyao, who was standing beside Li Daochong, opened her mouth wide as she stared at Li Daochong in a daze. Was this still her foolish brother? It was as if Li Qingyao had just met Li Daochong for the first time. Aside from his appearance, Li Qingyao could not tell anything about Li Daochong from the past. Bang! Li Daochong loosened his grip and kicked Lu Hao in the chest. The latter was sent flying like a kite with its string cut. He landed heavily 5 meters away and lay motionless on the ground. Zhang Shaoqing's eyes were filled with shock. He looked at Li Daochong with eyes full of doubt and confusion. Didn't this fool not even have a spirit vein? Lu Hao was a 4th-layer qi refining cultivator, only 1 step away from the 5th layer. He was actually insta-killed by Li Daochong? How was that possible? Before Zhang Shaoqing could react, a figure flashed in front of him. Li Daochong had already appeared in front of him. Zhang Shaoqing was so scared that he took 3 steps back. "You're not Li Daochong?" Zhang Shaoqing asked in shock. That was the only possibility he could think of. Just as he finished speaking, Zhang Shaoqing was sent flying more than 10 meters away. Half of his face was badly mutilated. Li Daochong was expressionless as he slowly walked towards Zhang Shaoqing. "Don't come over!" Zhang Shaoqing screamed in fear. Li Daochong ignored him and walked over step by step. "Tui, damn it, don't force me!" Zhang Shaoqing spat out a mouthful of blood and said angrily. Li Daochong was still walking forward at the same speed. "Armor break!" Zhang Shaoqing waved his hand and a silver light shot out. Armor break talisman card, Zhang Shaoqing's life-saving trump card. It was a level 2 strengthened armor break talisman, specially used to deal with ghost beasts with thick skin. Dang! There was a crisp sound. A Zamadeo appeared in Li Daochong's hand and easily blocked the armor break talisman. Even if it was a strengthened level 2 talisman card, it couldn't cause damage to a low-grade human tier talisman unless it reached level 3. When Zhang Shaoqing saw that the situation was not right, he turned around and ran. Before he could run 2 steps, Li Daochong had already appeared in front of him. Their speeds were not on the same level. The Zamadeo chopped down. Zhang Shaoqing shouted, "Li Daochong, you can't kill me. I'm from the Zhang family. If you kill me, the Zhang family won't let you go. The cultivator police will also find you and bring you to the cultivation court for trial." The Zamadeo in Li Daochong's hand stopped in midair. It wasn't that Li Daochong was afraid of the Zhang family, but at that moment, Zhang Shaoqing reminded him that if he killed this guy directly, the Federation Security Bureau would not be easy to fool. Zhang Shaoqing secretly heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that Li Daochong was afraid. He said, "Li Daochong, you're smart. You're no longer a member of the Li family. What can you use to fight with the Zhang family? As long as you let me go, I'll tell you why I captured your sister today." Li Daochong narrowed his eyes and slowly put down the Zamadeo. "Speak." Zhang Shaoqing looked at Li Daochong warily and said, "Let me sit in the floating car and I'll tell you." As soon as he said that, Zhang Shaoqing's stomach was punched. "What?" Zhang Shaoqing even vomited bile. "You." Zhang Shaoqing spat out a word and his stomach was punched again. His internal organs seemed to have been shattered. Li Daochong raised his fist again. "Wait a minute, I'll talk." Zhang Shaoqing was shocked. Li Daochong's fist was too heavy. If he took another punch, he would really vomit blood. "We captured Li Qingyao to lure Li Tianyang here. There's an ambush at the house where you live. As long as Li Tianyang leaves, they'll go and capture Yin Ping." Zhang Shaoqing had no choice but to reveal the whole plan. Li Daochong's gaze turned colder. "Zhang Honglai told you to do it?" Zhang Shaoqing hesitated. He didn't dare to betray Zhang Honglai, but Li Daochong's fist could land on him at any time. Li Daochong only asked one question. He waited for a few seconds, but Zhang Shaoqing still didn't say anything. Then, he raised his fist again. Zhang Shaoqing clutched his stomach, and his eyeballs almost fell out. He was so scared that he hurriedly said, Yes, it was Zhan Honglai who told me to do it. As soon as Zhan Shaoqing's voice fell, Li Daochong swung his hand and the former's vision turned black, and he fainted. Li Daochong originally wanted to kill him, but after careful consideration, he restrained himself. Even if Zhan Honglai had the power of his family, and even had connections with the underground forces of the underground city, he didn't directly kill him, a fool who was abandoned by his family and had no one to rely on. Obviously, he had some scruples about the Federation's cultivation method. The cultivator police of the Federation's Security Bureau weren't to be trifled with. Zhan Honglai instructed Zhan Shaoqing to take such a big detour, and the final target was Yin Ping. There was only one reason, and that was Yin Ping's identity wasn't protected by the Federation's cultivation method. They could do whatever they wanted with her, and it didn't matter if she died. At most, they just had to pay for it, and it wouldn't violate the Federation's cultivation method. Li Daochong had completely calmed down at this time. If he really killed Zhan Shaoqing and Lu Hao, or even the two burly men, the Zhan family's revenge would be small, but it would be troublesome if he was arrested by the Federation's Security Bureau. In the ancient cultivation era, people killed without hesitation, but with the continuous development of the cultivation civilization, they were gradually controlled. If not, in this world where everyone could cultivate, everything would go out of control and fall into complete chaos. There was no need for the Hades to invade, and humans would destroy themselves. Until Li Daochong brought Li Qingyao to Ouyang Qian's floating car, she was still looking at Li Daochong with a shocked expression. "Qingyao, is there something on my face?" Li Daochong touched his face and asked. "Ah no." Li Qingyao's face turned red, and she screamed and lowered her head. Li Daochong gave the promised 2 spirit stones to Ouyang Qian. After receiving the spirit stones, Ouyang Qian beamed with joy. She took the money and did things for him, and she sent the brother and sister home. Because Li Tianyang hadn't been lured out, Li Daochong wasn't worried about home. Although Li Tianyang was still recovering, those below the qi gathering stage were definitely not his match. When he got home, just as Li Daochong expected, with Li Tianyang overseeing things, Zhan Honglia's lackeys didn't dare to make a move. As usual, Yin Ping tidied up the other rooms. When Li Qingyao saw Li Tianyang sobbing, Li Daochong quietly left the room. Li Daochong returned to his room. Just as he was fiddling with the brain on the table, his wristwatch flashed. He opened it and saw that it was a long-distance message from Qiao Shima. "The wedding date has been announced, and the invitations are being sent out. Come with me to a friend's birthday party next week." After reading it, Li Daochong curled his lips and closed the message. He immediately immersed himself in the brain's spirit sequence. Making a level 3 rune card every night had become a compulsory course for him. In the following days, Li Daochong battled with Chu Qianyue in the weightless room for 5 hours every day. He soaked in the strengthened healing elixir for an hour, and then went to the library to browse various books on spirit-based programming for 3 hours. At night, when he returned home, he focused on spirit sequence coding and making rune cards. Before going to bed, he would cultivate the telekinesis battle technique. Li Daochong had always been on guard against the revenge of the Zhan family, but a few days passed peacefully. Zhan Honglai was picked up by someone every day. It was said that after Blizzard Bing's home visit, Zhan Honglia's father put him under control. This news couldn't be better for Li Daochong, and he devoted all his attention to learning and cultivation. During this time, Qiao Shima looked for Li Daochong a few times, and the two of them had a few meals together. While pretending to be a couple, Qiao Shima clearly explained some of the wedding matters to Li Daochong. A few days later, Qiao Shima drove a star-grade floating vehicle and brought Li Daochong to Tianyuan City's tallest building, Cloud-Piercing Tower, to attend the birthday party of a good friend of hers. It was said that this good friend's identity wasn't ordinary. She wasn't from Blue Bay Star, and her family's influence was mainly on Red Sun Star. However, they had business dealings with many cultivation companies on Blue Bay Star, and the Chiao family was one of them. Chiao Shima brought Li Daochong with her to put on a show. Bringing her fiancé to a friend's birthday party was naturally to foreshadow the upcoming wedding. Li Daochong wasn't keen on this kind of thing, but since he had already agreed to Chiao Shima's fake marriage and had even taken the deposit, he naturally couldn't refuse. But when he saw his good friend, Chiao Shima, he immediately pulled his collar to cover half of his face, not wanting her to recognize him. "Happy birthday, Zeno!" Chiao Shima saw her good friend and immediately greeted her with a warm hug. Chapter 46. Li Daochong didn't expect that the friend Chiao Shima mentioned was actually her, the daughter of the middle-aged man he had treated in Zixiao People's Hospital last time. The world was big, but it was also small. Li Daochong didn't want to be recognized, so he pulled his collar and stood aside. Although Chiao Shima brought Li Daochong to such an occasion, she actually rejected it in her heart. In the end, Li Daochong was really unpresentable. If it weren't for the Li family's pressure recently, Chiao Shima wouldn't even want to go through with the fake marriage. The family's status on Red Sun Star was higher than the 4 major families on Blue Bay Star. And Sinuo lived in Blue Bay Star for a while, when she was a child and was fostered in her aunt's house. She happened to be neighbors with Chiao Shima, so the two met. If not for this, it would be impossible for the Chiao family to get in touch with a big family like the family. Although Sinuo didn't have a sense of superiority and arrogance, how to introduce Li Daochong on such an occasion still made Chiao Shima feel ashamed. After exchanging greetings with Sinuo, Chiao Shima pulled Li Daochong over with a smile on her face, but there was a big shadow in her heart. She introduced, "Sinuo, this is my fiancé, Li Daochong." And Sinuo knew that Chiao Shima would bring her fiancé over today, so she was naturally mentally prepared to check for her friend. Of course, Sinuo had known for a long time that Chiao Shima had a stupid fiancé, but she had been born in an aristocratic family since she was a child, so how could she not know her friend's helplessness? Therefore, she had never asked about this marriage in front of her friend. Perhaps because Chiao Shima's stupid fiancé was too famous, Sinuo was also very curious. She had never seen him before. In Sinuo's impression, a fool should have a dull face all day long, drooling mouth, slurring speech, looking deformed, or lacking a string in the brain and having difficulties in communication. However, when Sinuo saw the young man Chiao Shima pulled over, he didn't have any characteristics of a fool in her impression. He was handsome, fair, and half a head taller than the slender Chiao Shima. Except for looking a little weak, everything else was normal. It was impolite to stare at people, so Sinuo retracted her gaze after a glance and extended her hand politely. "Sinuo, I'm Sinuo. Chiao Shima is my good friend. You have to treat her well in the future. Okay." Li Daochong reached out and gently shook Sinuo's hand. He quickly retracted his hand and hid half of his face behind his collar. "Hello, Chiao Shima often talks about you. Happy birthday." Chiao Shima was worried that Li Daochong would be stupid, so after introducing Li Daochong, she deliberately sent him away and said, "Daochong, Sinuo and I haven't seen each other for a long time. Let's have a chat first. If you're hungry, there's a buffet and red spirit wine over there. I'll come to you later." Li Daochong couldn't ask for more. His stomach had been protesting for a long time. "Okay, take your time." Then he went to the buffet table. However, the moment Li Daochong turned sideways, Sinuo saw his whole profile clearly. She was slightly stunned and felt strange. She seemed to have seen him somewhere before. When Chiao Shima saw Sinuo staring at Li Daochong with a strange expression, she mistakenly thought that Sinuo was curious about the fool. Fearing that she would stop Li Daochong, Chiao Shima hurriedly pulled Sinuo to the other side of the banquet hall. Li Daochong walked to the buffet table and was immediately attracted by the variety of food on the table. There were all kinds of flavors. Most of them were high-end spirit beast meat, such as fire salamander meat, ice jiao claws, thunder bear loin meat, and many spirit fruit. Li Daochong picked up a large piece of thunder bear loin meat and stuffed it into his mouth. He ate 5 skewers in one breath, 3 vermilion spirit fruits in one bite, and an ice jiao rib in 2 or 3 bites. In just a few minutes, Li Daochong wiped out all the food on the 5 plates in front of him. However, when he picked up a glazed fruit and took a bite, he found that many guests who came to attend the banquet were looking at him with disdain. Normally, Li Daochong wouldn't care what they thought of him. What he ate was none of their business. However, today's occasion was special. Qiao Shima was his client, so he had to pay attention to his image. Li Daochong glanced at the south side of the banquet hall, where there was an external balcony. There was no one there. Then he picked up a plate full of food and a glass of red spirit wine, and went to the balcony. Naturally, 1 plate of food was not enough. Li Daochong came back to take 2 more plates and went back to the balcony again. He was the only one enjoying the feast on the large balcony. How cool it was! These few plates of food were not something that ordinary people could eat casually. The Cloud Palace on the top floor of the Cloud Piercing Building was the top club in Tianyuan City. A casual meal for individual guests would cost at least 10 or 20,000. How could such a banquet be held? The spirit beast meat on the table was of high quality. A random thunder bear loin skewer was worth several thousand yuan. Li Daochong thought as he ate. And Xinua's birthday party was so extravagant. It was even grander than his own birthday party. The Yin family's strength was not below the Li family's. The price he charged for the middle-aged man's treatment last time was obviously too low. The food Li Daochong had eaten was probably worth tens of thousands of yuan. Just as Li Daochong was enjoying the delicious food and wine, the balcony door was pushed open and a disabled young man in a nimble wheelchair floated in. Li Daochong's mouth was full of food. He glanced at the young man who suddenly appeared and continued to bury himself in the food. "Are you here to attend the banquet?" The disabled young man floated to the opposite side of Li Daochong's table and asked. "Yes." Li Daochong's mouth was full and he couldn't speak. He could only respond, "I heard that many grassroots cultivators, in order to eat good spirit beast meat to aid their cultivation, will sneak into the banquet when there are too many people. In fact, they don't know anyone at all and eat without paying. Don't you think this is very annoying?" The disabled young man looked at Li Daochong with a smile and asked. "Yes." Li Daochong answered vaguely with a mouth full of food. He wondered why the young man said this to him. This kind of person, no matter how much spirit beast meat he eats, it won't help his cultivation at all. Because there is a problem with his mind, everything he does will be a problem. Don't you think so? The disabled young man continued. Li Daochong's mouth was as big as a baboon's and he really couldn't speak. He gave a thumbs up to indicate that the disabled young man was right. "Then why are you still eating?" The disabled young man's face darkened, and his easygoing tone became angry. Li Daochong continued to give a thumbs up and muttered vaguely, It's delicious." The disabled young man's hand on the edge of the table suddenly exerted force and pushed Li Daochong. The disabled young man regretted it after he made a move. He used too much force this time. The kid opposite him looked like a little bastard who ate without paying. He was afraid that he would be crippled this time. Clang! The table flew out and hit the balcony railing. Li Daochong got up and walked to the side with the plate in his hand. He was going to go in and add more food to continue eating. The disabled young man was stunned for a moment, then he breathed a sigh of relief. This kid was lucky to have avoided it. Otherwise, something would have happened. The disabled young man only wanted to teach this dine and dash kid a lesson. He didn't really want to do anything to him. Looking at this guy's pale and weak appearance, the disabled young man changed his mind and didn't want to make a move. With a thought, an invisible wave of telekinesis blasted out. It wasn't easy to control the strength of his hand, mainly because he didn't know what this freeloader was capable of. If he used too much force and killed him, it would be troublesome. The disabled young man used telekinesis to attack. At least he could grasp the strength of the attack. This kind of strength could cause a cultivator below the 5th level of Qi refining to have a splitting headache. When they returned, they would have nightmares for a night. After a few days, they would slowly get better and wouldn't be harmed. In the disabled young man's opinion, this kind of punishment was enough. As soon as Li Daochong walked away, the table he was sitting on flew out. He was confused, not knowing why the disabled young man suddenly pushed the table. He turned to look at him. Li Daochong had just turned his face when a wave of telekinesis attacked him. However, this level of telekinesis attack was no different from nothing to him. However, this wave of telekinesis contained a faint aura of death and a strong murderous aura. This kind of murderous aura could only be possessed by people who had experienced cruel killing field. This wave of telekinesis was not strong, but its penetrating power was very strong. It was the first time that Li Daochong had been attacked by someone's telekinesis. He was a little curious and began to study this wave of telekinesis. Seeing Li Daochong's expression suddenly freeze and he stood still, the disabled young man's heart skipped a beat. Oh no, this kid's mental strength is too weak, isn't it? I've already reduced the strength of my telekinesis to a very low level. How did he become an idiot? Brother, what happened just now? And Xinhua pushed open the balcony door and looked at Ndingbang and asked nervously. When she saw the smashed table and Li Daochong standing there motionlessly, and Xinua's heart jumped. Her brother had been in the army for several years. 2 years ago, he was injured by a malicious ghost on the frontline battlefield and was infected with miasma. His lower body was disabled, and his cultivation level plummeted. Since he was a child, his dream of destroying all the dark ghosts was shattered. After he came back, he began to study the path of cultivation, but his fiery temper had never changed. As long as he didn't like someone, he would definitely teach them a lesson. Last time, Ndingbang was ridiculed on Red Sun Planet for being disabled. He directly bombarded that person with his telekinesis, and his father spent a lot of money to settle it. Looking at Li Daochong's appearance, and Xinua's heart sank. Her good friend brought her fiancé to celebrate her birthday, but in the end, her fiancé became an idiot. And Xinhua didn't dare to think about it. Chapter 47. Hearing Qiao Shima's voice, and Xinhua was a little overwhelmed. Sitting in the floating wheelchair, Ding Bang was dumbfounded. He didn't expect that he would get into trouble on impulse and turn Qiao Shima into an idiot. He immediately regretted it. Today was his sister's birthday party, which should have been a happy occasion, but he turned it into a crime scene. Ding Bang regretted it. Qiao Shima was eating for free. It was just a drop in the bucket for the family. Why did he have to teach Qiao Shima a lesson? Thunder Bear Tenderloin is still the best. A sigh broke the silence on the balcony. Ding Bang, who was regretting, was stunned when he saw the young man suddenly move again. He licked his lips as if nothing had happened and turned to enter the banquet hall. And Xinhuo didn't know what was going on. Seeing that Li Daochong was fine, he finally felt relieved. Anyway, it was good that nothing happened. When Li Daochong turned around, he met Xinhuo face to face, and their eyes met. And Xinhuo's heart was lifted again, but this time it wasn't nervousness or worry, but excitement. Divine Doctor, it's you. And Xinhuo exclaimed. Li Daochong's heart skipped a beat. Damn it, why didn't you stay in the banquet hall to receive everyone's blessings for your birthday? Why did you come to the balcony? Miss Xinhuo, I think you've got the wrong person. I'm not a divine doctor. The profession of alchemy is too profound for me to learn. Li Daochong responded quickly. Besides, he wasn't a divine doctor. If it weren't for the hot-blooded upgrader, he wouldn't have been able to deal with the black resentment-binding spirit in the middle-aged man's body. Li Daochong didn't want to be recognized. Li Daochong entered the banquet hall from the other side. And Sinuo was embarrassed. Did I get the wrong person? But how could there be two people who looked so similar in the world? And Sinuo, what happened outside just now? Xiao Shimo ran over and asked worriedly. Seeing Li Daochong coming in from the balcony, her heart skipped a beat. Did this guy cause any trouble? Ah, nothing. The wind blew the table down. And Sinuo was comparing Li Daochong with the young miracle-working doctor he met in Zixiao People's Hospital half a month ago in his memory when Xiao Shima's voice suddenly came. He was startled and casually found an excuse to reply. Xiao Shima didn't believe it. She looked past Ancino and saw that only one table had fallen. Sino, isn't that your brother? The wind outside is so strong that even the table has been blown over. Let him in quickly. Xiao Shima said with concern. All right. And Sinuo was a little absent-minded. After responding, he turned around and walked away without calling her brother. Seeing this, Xiao Shima's pretty face was filled with worry. Could it be that Li Daochong had a conflict with Ansinuo's brother? Otherwise, why would Ansinuo look so preoccupied that he didn't even hear what she said clearly? If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have brought this guy. Xiao Shima was filled with regret. She braced herself and called out to Dingbang on the balcony. Brother Dingbang, it's windy outside. Come in. We'll be cutting the cake soon. After Li Daochong left as if nothing had happened, Dingbang was puzzled. He had been thinking about what went wrong with his telekinesis attack just now. However, after thinking about it, Dingbang confirmed that his telekinesis attack had indeed hit the other party. But why did the kid look like nothing had happened? A kindred spirit? A psychic cultivator? Dingbang's face showed a touch of excitement. He didn't expect to meet a master just by coming to Blue Bay Star to relax. Dingbang was thinking when he heard Xiao Shima calling him. He replied, I'll be right there. Xiao Shimo returned to the banquet hall, feeling uneasy. Just now, she saw that Dingbang didn't look very good. Something must have happened. Just now, there was no third person on the balcony except for Li Daochong and Dingbang. Xiao Shima didn't know what to do for a while. She felt guilty for messing up her friend's birthday and wanted to find a hole to hide in. Li Daochong entered the banquet hall and went straight to the buffet table. There was nothing in his eyes except for food. He didn't know the people at the banquet and had nothing to do. It was rare for him to have such a good spirit beast meal. It would be a waste if he didn't eat it. Li Daochong's appetite had increased recently. His stomach was like a bottomless pit. No matter how much he ate, it could be digested and turned into the energy his body needed. The feces and urine he excreted were extremely smelly. His body seemed to be quietly changing, extracting the essence and removing the dregs. Li Daochong picked up his favorite Thunder Bear tenderloin and ate while choosing other food. From time to time, he would take a sip of red spirit wine, which tasted soft and refreshing. Li Daochong. Li Daochong was eating when someone called him. He turned his head and saw that it wasn't Shinua. Damn it. Li Daochong's forehead creased. What's this girl doing? Throwing away John Huanyo? Startled? Blink? Page dizziness? Stop? Ants moaning? Moaning? Thinking slowly. Missen, what's the matter? Did you go to Zixiao People's Hospital half a month ago? No. Li Daochong focused on the food in front of him and didn't even think about it. Are you sure? And Shinua asked. Li Daochong saw that Shinua wanted to get to the bottom of the matter and was afraid of her, so he changed the topic and asked, Yes, Missen. The food you arranged for this birthday banquet is really good. Can I take some with me later? Just take it. I'll ask the chef to make some more for you later. Have you spent the last 100,000 yuan? And Shinua said lightly. She had been staring at Li Daochong. The young man she saw last time left a deep impression on her. She couldn't be wrong, unless there were two people who looked exactly the same in the world. Even if there were, the feeling of people would still be different. Li Daochong's feeling at this time was exactly the same as the young man she saw last time. She was absolutely not wrong, and Xinhua was very sure of her judgment. Spent early. What 100,000 yuan? Missen, I don't understand. Li Daochong, who picked up another piece of fire element fruit and took a bite, almost blurted it out inadvertently. He squinted at Xinhua. Damn it, this girl is so cunning. She actually tricked me. And Xinua's eyes flashed with a trace of slyness. Li Daochong changed his words in time, but the two words he blurted out were still heard by Xinhua. You are the miracle-working doctor, right? And Xinhua didn't give up. Missen, I don't know what you are talking about. I am really not a miracle-working doctor. Thank you for thinking so highly of me. Today is your birthday. You should happily accept the blessings and gifts from your friend. Don't think too much. There are only pharmacists in the world. At most, you can only be a chief pharmacist. There is no miracle-working doctor. Li Daochong was determined not to admit it. I can't be wrong. Miracle-working doctor, are you unwilling to reveal your identity? It doesn't matter. My father and I just want to thank you. We will never publicize it. And Xinhua promised, looking at Li Daochong with a pair of big eyes earnestly. She stayed in Blue Bay Star and didn't leave because she was looking for the miracle-working doctor. In addition to her father, there were several people in her family who had the same disease. Ding Bang also had problems recently, so it was useless to check up on him. Li Daochong smiled bitterly in his heart. This girl was not easy to fool. Missen, I'm really not. Li Daochong was ready to walk away. You are. And Xinhua reached out and grabbed Li Daochong, not letting him go. These days, she had used a lot of her connections and spent a lot of money just to find that young man. Now that he was in front of her, she couldn't let him go no matter what. Missen, men and women shouldn't touch each other. I'm your good friend's fiancé. Mind your image. Li Daochong pushed Xinhua. The two of them pulled and pulled, which immediately attracted the attention of others. As the absolute protagonist today, Xinhua naturally attracted a lot of attention. Xinhua, is this person harassing you? Do you need me to drive him away? Wang Su had already noticed this. When he saw Xinhua being pushed, he immediately came to rescue her. Wang Su was from one of the 4 major families in Blue Bay Star. The Wang family was close to the main branch and had some power. He was mainly responsible for the business dealings between the Wang family and the An family on Red Sun Star. He was one of the many suitors of Xinhua and also one of the few who felt the best about himself. He thought that with the Wang family backing him, his conditions were many times better than others. Regardless of his background, Wang Su's strength was not weak. At the age of 23, he had already reached the 9th level of qi refinement. What harassment! Wang Su, please mind your words. He's my friend. Believe it or not, I'll drive you away. And Xinhua had finally found the miracle doctor and was counting on him to save her family. Suddenly, someone came to criticize the miracle doctor. She immediately felt uncomfortable. She was afraid that Li Daochong would be unhappy, so she immediately retorted. Wang Su looked at Li Daochong with an awkward and surprised expression. This guy was dressed shabbily and didn't even have a Dharma robe. Was he Xinua's friend? He wanted to be the hero to save the beauty, but he made a mistake. Chapter 48. Wang Su was from one of the 4 major families of Blue Bay Star. The Wang family was relatively close to the main branch and had some power. He was mainly responsible for the business dealings between the Wang family and the An family of Red Sun Star. He was one of the many suitors of Xinhua. He thought that he had the support of the Wang family and felt very good about himself. Regardless of his background, Wang Su's strength was not weak. He was 23 years old and had reached the 9th level of qi refining. What harassment! Wang Su, please mind your words. He is my friend. Believe it or not, I will drive you away. And Xinhua finally found the miracle doctor and was counting on him to save her family. Suddenly, someone came up to criticize the miracle doctor. She immediately felt uncomfortable and was afraid that Li Daochong would be unhappy, so she immediately retorted. Wang Su looked embarrassed and looked at Li Daochong in surprise. This guy was dressed shabbily and didn't even have a dharma robe, but he was Xinhua's friend? He wanted to be the hero to save the damsel in distress and please Xinhua, but he made a mistake. It turns out to be a friend. Sorry I was rude. Hello, my name is Wang Su, the external business manager of the Wang family, one of the 4 major families of Blue Bay Star. May I know which family this friend is from? Wang Su was not angry after being rebuked by Xinhua. He immediately greeted Li Daochong and introduced himself in a very superior way. He even emphasized the words Wang family for fear that the other party could not hear him. Wang Su looked at Li Daochong with an incomparably superior smile on his face. Everyone in Blue Bay Star knew the name of the Wang family. As long as he said his name, everyone would try to curry favor with him. Wang Su waited for the other party to flatter him. He had seen this kind of scene too many times. Some people couldn't wait to call him father on the spot. Li Daochong acted as if he didn't hear Wang Su's words at all. He pushed Xinhua away, picked up a plate of spirit beast meat and a glass of red spirit wine from the table, and went straight to the corner. Wang Su's face twitched twice and his eyes turned cold. What the hell? How dare he show off in front of me? Wang Su looked coldly at the leaving Li Daochong and then turned his eyes to Xinhua. Xinhua, can I invite you to dance later? And Xinhua didn't even look at Wang Su and chased after Li Daochong and replied impatiently, Go away, don't bother me. A basin of cold water drenched him from head to toe. Wang Su stood there like an idiot. Li Daochong sat down and began to enjoy the food. Li Daochong, I can't be wrong. It was you at the Zixiao People's Hospital last time. Encino caught up with Li Daochong. Li Daochong was afraid of Xinhua's relentless pursuit. If this continued, he would become the center of attention. Missin, if you say so, then so be it. Is this okay? Li Daochong said reluctantly. I knew I was right. Dr. Li, thank you for curing my father last time. After the banquet is over, can you take a look at my brother again? He has a similar disease as my father. Encino asked Li Tianlan with joy on his face. Li Daochong wanted to refuse, but when he saw several guests coming this way, he said in a low voice, Missin, see you after the banquet. Now, can you please don't disturb me while I eat? Seeing Li Daochong finally admit it, Xinhua smiled triumphantly and turned away. Li Daochong shook his head helplessly, picked up the ice dragon ribs and began to eat. After finishing the food in his hand, Li Daochong drank up the red spirit wine. When he was about to get up and get some more food, he saw Zhang Honglai talking to a man in a low voice in the other corner. This guy also came to the banquet? Enemies often cross paths. Li Daochong's expression changed. He used his telekinesis to cover Zhang Honglai and quietly listened to what he was saying. Young Master Zhang, as long as Qiao Shima drinks this glass of red wine, she will be at your mercy. Today, most of the powerful family juniors in Tianyuan City will be present. When Qiao Shima announces the annulment of her engagement with Li Daochong in public, it will be impossible to take back what you said. The man smiled obscenely. Is the puppet pill really so magical? Zhang Honglai asked suspiciously. Of course. This is the masterpiece of the old man of thunder and fire in the underground city. One pill is worth 500,000 yuan, and it can be produced in 3 months. As soon as it comes out of the furnace, people will rush to get it. Needless to say, the effect will last for a day and a night. After Qiao Shima announces the engagement, you can take her wherever you want. As long as the rice is cooked, she will be your woman in life and your ghost in death. Even if she wakes up, there is nothing she can do. Li Daochong, that fool, you don't have to care about him. The man's obscene smile became more intense. The two talked directly in a very low voice. The man also used his robe to support an invisible sound barrier. Even if a qi-gathering stage cultivator stood beside them and pricked up their ears to listen, they would not be able to hear what they were talking about. Zhan Honglai had always been cautious, but he would never dream that their conversation would be heard clearly by Li Daochong, who had super telekinesis. Li Daochong frowned. Zhan Honglai was really willing to do anything to get Qiao Shima. Li Daochong did not have much feelings for Qiao Shima. He only agreed to the fake marriage for the sake of money. As for Qiao Shima's safety, Li Daochong was not very concerned about it. However, Zhan Honglai had caused trouble for Li Daochong and the people around him many times. He had even tried to kill them. Li Daochong would not let this matter rest. Li Daochong did not know what Zhan Honglai wanted to do, but since he knew, he would not let him succeed. Besides, if something really happened to Qiao Shima and they could not consummate the marriage, then he would not be able to get the rest of the money. 100,000 Federation coins was fine, but 80 spirit stones were good stuff. Whether it was for business or personal reasons, Li Daochong had to help Qiao Shima this time. Zhan Honglai and the man exchanged a few more words before they separated. Zhan Honglai went straight to Qiao Shima, who was chatting with a few girls. Li Daochong put down the plate in his hand and quickly walked over. He looked coldly at the two wine glasses in Zhan Honglia's hands. He did not know which one had dissolved the doll pill. Shima, long time no see. Zhan Honglai elegantly walked to the girls and greeted Qiao Shima, while nodding to the others. The girls looked at Qiao Shima enviously. One of the girls nudged Qiao Shima and said, "Shima, you are so popular. In such a short time, 3 young masters have taken the initiative to greet you. They only have eyes for a beauty like you and don't even look at us. It's so sad." "Yes, it's so sad. Shima, you have such good conditions. Of all the people you could marry, why did you choose a fool in the end? If his father was still a Jin Dan cultivator, it would be fine. But now that he has been crippled, you still want to marry that fool Li Daochong. Are you confused?" Another red-haired girl jeered. "Go away, don't mention it. Shima, don't pay attention to them. Hurry up and introduce us to this tall and strong young master." The last girl in yellow Taoist robes saw that Qiao Shima was embarrassed and rolled her eyes at the other 2 girls. Qiao Shima glared at the red-haired girl, but she couldn't do anything about this girl's blabbermouth. She then introduced, "He is the first heir of the Zhan family in Dongqing, Zhan Honglai. My uncle and his father are close friends. We have known each other since we were young." "Oh, so you two are childhood sweethearts." The girls deliberately showed an expression of sudden realization. Zhan Honglai had an expression of enjoyment and said with a smile, "Shima often mentions you two in front of me. I will treat you to a soak in the spirit spring some other day." Wow, a soak in the spirit spring of Ling Shao Mountain costs tens of thousands of yuan. Young Master Zhan is so generous. I think you two are more compatible. The red-haired girl with blabbermouth said loudly. Shaoling, lower your voice. Shima's fiancé is here today. It won't be good if he hears, the yellow-clothed girl reminded. Let him come. It's good that he hears. I feel bad for Shima, so what? The red-haired girl called Shaoling said indignantly. Shima, this friend of yours is full of energy. Chapter 49. Do you want to die? Who are you? Why are you standing behind me so quietly? The sudden voice startled Shaoling. She patted her chest and exclaimed. Xiaoling turned around and saw a fair-skinned young man in simple clothes standing behind her. His appearance was not bad, but he looked like a poor boy. Xiaoling was about to get angry. The girl in yellow hurriedly pulled Xiaoling back and whispered, "He's Shima's fiancé." Xiaoling froze for a moment and then rolled her eyes at Li Daochong. She said indifferently, "Stupid people do stupid things. This old mother won't argue with you." Li Daochong smiled and nodded with a serious face, "You're old enough." The girls beside them couldn't help but laugh. They were usually scolded by Xiaoling and were secretly pleased to see her being scolded. When Xiaoling heard this, she immediately exploded. She glared at Li Daochong. "Who are you calling old?" Li Daochong didn't look at Xiaoling. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Whoever is the old mother is old." Xiaoling trembled with anger and turned to look at Xiao Shima. "Shima, how can you be with this kind of person?" Zhan Honglai saw that Li Daochong had a conflict with Xiao Shima's good friend in public. He was happy in his heart and looked at Li Daochong with a disdainful smile. Li Daochong's initiative to come over had already left Xiao Shima at a loss. She didn't intend to introduce Li Daochong to these good friends, especially Xiaoling. This girl was straightforward and wasn't a bad person, but she had been spoiled since childhood and had a late stage of princess syndrome. Her father was also a qi-gathering cultivator, so she was used to being arrogant and didn't give in to anyone, especially that mouth of hers, which was more poisonous than snakes and scorpions. Xiao Shima was afraid that Li Daochong didn't know how to speak and would have a conflict with her good friend. What she feared would happen. Xiao Shima frowned. She didn't know how much she regretted bringing Li Daochong to the birthday party. However, Xiao Shima had already taken over the family business and majored in foreign trade, so she knew how to deal with this kind of deadlock. Xiao Shima was about to speak when Zhan Honglai, who had been watching the show, said, "We're all here to attend someone else's birthday party. Don't hurt each other. Let's all talk. Come, let's have a drink." As he spoke, Zhan Honglai waved at a waiter who was carrying a tray. The waiter walked over with a few glasses of red wine. "Shima, look at young Master Zhan. Some people really can't compare with his demeanor. You can tell who's the white horse and who's the toad at a glance." Xiaoling had just suffered a loss in words. Naturally, she wasn't convinced and wanted to turn the tables no matter what. Xiao Shima frowned and pretended not to hear. If she had to choose between Zhan Honglai and Li Daochong, she would definitely choose Li Daochong. She wouldn't choose Zhan Honglai because she knew the latter's glorious deeds very well. Li Daochong was harmless no matter what. He was just a little stupid. Zhan Honglai was different. Who knew how many girls had been ruined by his hands? On the surface, Xiao Shima was still very friendly with Zhan Honglai. After all, the Qiao family relied on the Zhan family for a lot of business. Since Zhan Honglai had spoken, the other girls followed suit. They didn't want to make things difficult for Xiao Shima. One by one, they picked up their wine glasses and became peacemakers. Zhan Honglai handed one of the 2 glasses of red spirit wine he had been holding to Xiao Shima. The latter didn't think much about it and directly took it in her hand. Li Daochong's eyes, which had been smiling faintly, showed a trace of difficulty. If he pointed out the problem with the wine in public, not only would no one believe him, but he would also alert the enemy. Zhan Honglai would definitely be suspicious of him. When he talked to the man, he used a sound barrier and spoke very softly. How would he know? Last time, in order to save Li Qingyao, Li Daochong had actually revealed some of his strength. Zhan Honglai must have known from Zhan Shaoqing. However, because of Li Tianyang's return, Li Daochong did something to the 4 people after knocking them out. When they woke up, they would mistakenly think that there was an expert hiding in the dark to help Li Daochong. With Zhan Honglie's arrogant personality, he definitely wouldn't think that the 4 people were defeated by Li Daochong. He would definitely think that the expert hiding in the dark was Li Tianyang. However, breaking the sound barrier was a completely different matter. It was impossible to do it without the strength of a late-stage qi-gathering cultivator. The current Li Tianyang also couldn't do it. Li Daochong didn't want to reveal any of his trump cards, at least not before the end of the term test. Otherwise, if Zhan Honglai really wanted to fight to the death, he wouldn't be able to resist with his current strength. Moreover, the man who talked to Zhan Honglai just now said that the doll pill was colorless, tasteless, and non-toxic when dissolved in the wine. It couldn't be detected by the test. This thing would only work if it reacted with something in the body. Otherwise, it was no different from alcohol. If he really said it in public, Zhan Honglai was so sinister, he would definitely act according to the situation and say that he framed him. Li Daochong thought about it and could only think of one way, which was to knock over Qiao Shima's wine glass. Come, everyone, let's toast to Miss N's happy birthday. The girl in yellow raised her glass. Yes, happy birthday to Miss N, cheers. Another girl followed. Everyone raised their glasses. Zhan Honglai narrowed his eyes and looked at Qiao Shima. As long as she drank this glass of wine, this birthday party would become a prelude to his wedding night, and Li Daochong would become the biggest joke in this prelude. Wait a minute. Just then, Li Daochong suddenly shouted to stop. The girls who raised their glasses looked at Li Daochong in confusion. Qiao Shima was the same. She couldn't help but frown. She had just calmed down the conflict between him and Xiaoling. What was this guy up to again? She couldn't help but feel nervous. Under everyone's confused gaze, Li Daochong turned to look at Qiao Shima, raised his glass and said, "Shima, thank you for marrying me. Here's a toast to you." Qiao Shima looked at Li Daochong in a daze. She didn't know what this guy was up to. Others might not know about the fake marriage, but the two of them had agreed beforehand. What did he mean by that? "Shima, don't you want to drink with me?" Li Daochong smiled. This scene made Zhan Honglai burn with jealousy. He gnashed his teeth and wanted to rush up and tear Li Daochong apart. But soon, Zhan Honglia's anger calmed down. He smiled coldly. "Stupid boy, I'll let you be smug for a while. Come on, drink this glass of wine. Let's see how you'll be smug then." Qiao Shima was stunned for a moment, but quickly recovered. No matter what this guy was up to, it was good to put on such a show in front of so many people. Just now, she also noticed that several of the Li family's juniors who came to attend the party were looking at her. After Qiao Shima and Li Daochong's marriage was announced, there were people following her around these days. The Li family obviously didn't believe that she could really marry Li Daochong. "Okay." Qiao Shima smiled and raised her glass. "Is this guy stupid? Why can't I see it? How can a fool do something so romantic?" Some of the girls whispered. "So romantic. If someone said something like that to me in front of everyone, it would be worth it to marry him," another girl said. Clang, clang. The sound of wine glasses colliding came to an abrupt stop before the crisp sound could spread out. Then came the discordant sound of shattering. The glass of wine shattered. Pretend I didn't say anything. This guy is really stupid." The girl who had spoken enviously just now looked at him with disdain. Qiao Shima looked at the shattered glass in her hand and the red spirit wine that spilled all over her hand. She sighed inwardly. She had overestimated Li Daochong. What kind of broken glass is this? It's so fragile. I didn't even use any strength and it shattered. Shima, I'm sorry. Is your hand okay? Let me help you wipe it. Li Daochong made a fuss about nothing. He hurriedly took the broken glass from Qiao Shima's hand and helped her wipe it. "No need. I'll do it myself." Qiao Shima looked at Li Daochong as if she was looking at a god of plague, but she couldn't avoid him. The Li family was looking at her. "You!" Zhan Honglia's heart exploded. He spat out a word, but he held it back. He wanted to shout but couldn't. 500,000 was gone just like that? Zhan Honglai felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His heart was bleeding. Losing money was a small matter, But his well-laid plan was ruined by an idiot just like that. Why did you have to use so much strength when you knocked glasses? Stupid C** and T. Jean Honglai cursed in his heart. Young Master Jean, your wine's spilled. Xiaoling saw that Jean Honglia's hand was trembling non-stop. The wine in the glass in his hand spilled out. Stupid C** and T. Jean Honglai was burning with anger. He blurted out the last two words. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.